Good afternoon. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Pitkin County Board of County Commissioners. It's Monday, May 12th, the 132nd day of the year. It is it's 1 p.m. We have an update on the McClure Pass communication site update. Kara.
Just move it closer to you.
Okay, thank you, board. So this afternoon we have quite the attendees here, and it's an honor to have so many folks from all across our western slope joining us. But what we are doing today is providing an update to the board about the McClure Pass communication site. Some of you may be aware that there is a proposal of updating that communication site, and so we have representatives from Gunnison County, the private firm Stryker Arrow, Forest Service, as well as Open Space and Public Safety from all around to speak to not only the project today, but the history of the efforts in this region to address communications and specifically public safety radio communications in the area. So before I move on, I'd love to introduce Scott Morrell. He is the Gunnison County Emergency Manager. Chris Stryker is with Arrow Marketing. We've been fortunate to work in the past when I got to be in more translator and broadband spaces, so it's fun to have him back. And then Kevin Warner is here with the Forest Service. And Scott, maybe I'll hand it to you to introduce who else might be in the room to be joining us.
Okay, do I have to turn this on?
Yeah, just the red light.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so in the room here we have Sheriff Murdy from Gunnison County, and then Deputy Emergency Manager Ryan White from Gunnison County, and Delta County Emergency Manager Chris Stewart.
Welcome to you.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to point out we have Pitkin County Sheriff Buglioni in the room with Brett Loeb in our communication site. I will share our emergency manager is at an ICS training right now, which is why Pitkin County's emergency manager is not here, but we've got great representation. So with that, I'm going to kick it off, and then I will be handing it to Chris and Scott for a little bit. But one of the pieces that we wanted to share with this board is a history of this project. There is a long-standing history of Pitkin County, Gunnison County, State of Colorado, Forest Service working together to try and address public safety communications in this region for quite some time. Please know this was put together very roughly through decades of information, so it's very rough. Probably technical terms are wrong, but I just want to give a brief history, and Scott, please jump in if I'm saying anything incorrectly here. But I think this goes back even further than 2004, but really in 2004 is when the FCC gave notice to switch to digital trunked radio system, which is what we use today from the VHF system. As the board is aware, that was part of the whole effort of updating all of our translator telecommunication sites in the county, because the original communication sites were very small towers, low power, minimal equipment space needs, and just the way it worked, it wasn't quite, maybe the coverage wasn't as good, but it wasn't also as on and off as really the DTR system is. And so as we started to make these rounds and updating the DTR system, Gunnison County, Delta County did it on their own. In their region, Pitkin County started doing it. The collective place where they all join is McClure Pass, and as the VHF went away in that area and DTRS came on, it became a very large public safety communications gap. There's an effort in 2008 when the state of Colorado really gave it the initiative to transition all public safety to DTRS, and that's when we started to look at how big this gap is. It is, and correct me if I'm wrong, still the largest coverage gap in the state for public safety radio. The efforts were reinvigorated in 2013. I was just looking through the slide deck there, and again, Gunnison, Pitkin, State of Colorado, Forest Service, all the players came back together. That was when the, I guess, strongest effort to see what could we do to update the communication site. What would that look like? There was lots of analysis. It was looking at, do we move the site from the current Gunnison County long-held site in that area? Do we move it somewhere up more on top of the pass? How do we look at getting power there, knowing that we're entering into roadless area in the Forest Service? Can we look at solar? Can we look at buried lines? And really, can we look at 4 or 5 different communication sites? And all of them, nothing was perfect. I'll leave it at that, I guess. I don't have the history of what was the inertia that created and then kind of the effort died down, but I can say in 2017, 2018, that's when the last iteration that Pitkin County was really involved in, was basically to take the work that was done in 2013 and really try and move that into a project. We had gone so far, let me take a step back. As reference for the board, that's when we were really in the throes of updating all of our telecommunication sites and moving to the microwave backhaul, DTRS, looking at broadband. So as we were finishing up the Elephant redevelopment, we really started to work with Gunnison County again on what can we do for McClure Pass. We went as far as starting the 299 process, looking at doing an entire environmental impact statement, to try and move this forward. At that time, the plan was to move the communication site from Gunnison County's current site, up to on top of the pass, and we were going to be looking at overhead lines up into an avalanche debris field, which has many concerns in of itself that way. But we had gone as far as contracting to start that EIS effort. Really, as we started to see the costs come in from all of our other telecommunication sites, we had to put that on the back burner. We just didn't have the funding, and there was still, we knew it was a large hurdle to still even get that EIS process started. So that is the long and very brief history that is mostly Scott's career of Pitkin County's role in helping to address public safety communications in the area. And today we've got Gunnison County and Arrow here to talk about the project that they have and the work that they're looking to address this issue. So that, I'm going to hand it to you, Scott.
Sure. So to add on to what Kara said, first of all, thanks for having us today. Appreciate the opportunity to brief you on the project. For the 2017 effort, we even went so far as to get a grant from DOLA. Gunnison County did with Pitkin County support to help offset the cost of the NEPA process. And there was a lot of challenges with the way that project was proposed, primarily the overhead lines. And once we had the funding in place, we determined through the Forest Service that overhead lines were not going to be a good option. So we had to deobligate the funds and kind of just wait for another day to start over. This particular effort, we actually started this in 2023. I started conversations with Chris's company, and this is the most progress we've made ever on this project. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to see this one to fruition. As Kara said, this is the largest communications gap in the state for the DTR system. It's also one of the larger gaps for cell coverage because you really have no cell coverage basically from Somerset to Redstone. And this site will do a lot to improve first responder safety for them being able to talk to their dispatch centers, to each other, and also for the citizens to be able to dial 911 if they encounter an incident or an accident along that stretch of highway. And I'd just like to point out real quickly that I think some of you are probably aware of the propane truck incident that occurred in late November on County Road 3 there by Marble. And we all knew this was an issue, but as we were trying to do public warning and public alerts to that area, there's no cell coverage, and so we were relying only on landline phones, and it really presented some challenges for us to communicate with the public. So as far as the technical aspect of this, I'll turn it over to Chris and let him explain what they got going.
Okay. Chris Stryker, yeah, thank you all for taking the time and allowing us to share the project with you. Yeah, Kara, I may just have you run through what I put in, and then we can just talk about each one. And so the first few slides discuss primarily utilities and then access as well. So if you go to, this is the overall picture of basically a 5.97 miles of fiber utility starting at the base, what I'll call the wagon trail junction with 133. So the next slide depicts essentially up the old wagon trail road with the Holy Cross junction point at the base. There'll be a combination of 4 conduits buried in a 24-inch trench, roughly 48 to 36 inches in depth. And I believe we counted up around 49 handholds where these junction points will be to pull the cable in approximately 800 feet apart. And you can see, it's hard to see on that picture, but the indications of where we're boring and where we're open trenching. If you go back one slide, Kara, sorry about that. The red section at the near the center of the screen, that will be open trenched. The yellow is then, that'll be bored, the red section, and the rest will be open trench is what's proposed right now.
Sounds better.
Yeah. And we looked at a couple different avenues. We looked at boring, straight through each switchback to kind of reduce the length. However, with this kind of material, and I'll get into that a little further, the open trenching is going to be a much more cost-effective way than trying to bore 6 miles of 4 conduits. So that gets us up about 3/4 away. Then you see where it comes in and joins the top of 133 or near the summit. We will enter at just on the right side of the screen where the yellow comes up to 133. There's a larger parking area right there, and that's actually about where the tunnel is proposed for the walking path to get to the other side of 133. We will then follow the highway right-of-way, state highway right-of-way, up to Ragged Mountain Road, remaining on, I'll call it on the north side. We'll then bore underneath 133 and open trench from there to the site. So that gets us to the summit, and then this follows down Ragged Mountain Road. And there's various slides getting us to that point. And then we can talk about the facility itself. So that's just following the road, open trench. There's another overview of the entire project area for utilities. And then we get into the site itself. So 195-foot self-support tower. I'll touch on the height. So if we remain under 200 feet, we can eliminate the lighting and the painting marking of the structure itself. I know that came up at the Redstone Caucus, concerns at a beacon or flashing lights. So if we remain under 200, of course, that depends on where we are within proximity to an airport. But in this area, under 200 will not trigger the FAA for lighting and marking. Also, with that being said, the industry standard for commercial carriers is 10-foot vertical separation. So if you consider the first carrier at roughly 188 and then 178, 68, 58, it goes down from there. So in order to have adequate space for all the commercial carriers, as well as the state, county, it requires to have that kind of height. The FAA is also attached in here, which is a few slides down, but you'll see the determination was no marking, no lighting. The ground equipment space consists of roughly 100 by 100 with a build-in-place shelter that'll accommodate each individual tenant. Those suites are made up so that we can fit some users in the same suite, and other users that require a little bit more equipment will have their own equipment space on the ground. And then the lattice self-support tower adjacent too.
Will you take an interruption?
Sure.
I just want to know what you mean by users.
So the commercial users, the AT&Ts, the Verizons, the T-Mobiles, the commercial carriers,
So
and then
just-
state.
Just for background, we just heard with the U.S. Forest Service, the co-location of services at Buttermilk, Ajax, and Highland. So we just did a telecom review, and just for your pocket, we'll come back to it. The towers were the towers were nowhere near 195 feet. So just keep that in your pocket.
Sure.
So we actually negotiated on Ajax, on Highlands, and on Buttermilk for a reduction in the tower height with the co-location of all the telecom services. So
Okay. Yeah, we'll keep that
I
in
think that
mind
is a
for sure.
question we'll come back to.
Yeah,
Patty?
What is the height of the existing tower?
70-foot guide tower.
So, yeah, I'm just thinking about the benefits versus the scenic impacts and how the community's going to feel about actually seeing what they want, which is cellular service up there.
And we'll get to some of those photos that are in
Okay.
the slide as well that you
Thank
can
you.
see. Yeah.
And I'll also add at this point that, the height of the tower is also a result of getting as much coverage as we can, both for cellular and for the DTRS radio system.
Next slide.
Yeah. And this just is a more detail on the shelter itself, generator backup in case of commercial power outage. And then there's the existing guide at 70 and the proposed 195. And keep in mind, what did we say the trees were around 60 feet in that area? The tower is buried within the trees. So it doesn't do us any good to put antennas at 55 because we're not going to get any coverage from that. So over and above the trees, then you consider what those centers will be as far as the mounting heights. So we are now into photo sims and renderings that the Forest Service had requested. The little red dots are the locations that both White River and GMUG had brought to us as far as vantage points that they wanted to see from this location, what the tower would look like or what you would see from those locations. We tried balloons, we tried drones, we tried multiple, and ended up getting a helicopter. So you will see those in the photos because, and keep in mind, a helicopter is a relatively large mass that you're going to see it. But when you consider what that's going to look like from the perspective of being down on the ground or the highway, the photo renderings will give you a better perspective. So if we want to go to, the first slide. So this one is at the Placida Trailhead. So you can see the helicopter's about 300 feet. So we'll be roughly 100 feet lower than the helicopter at that point. Next one. This one is at the Yellow House, which is right at the bend, almost near where our intersection is with the Holy Cross, where the trail actually takes off from. Again, that's the self-support tower, hard to see, right above the crest of the trees. And again, it's all in the perspective of where you are when you see this. There's a helicopter again at 300 feet. And this one was the historical marker just past the intersection where the new trailhead parking area is going to be. It wasn't a perspective that you provided us, but we could see it from there, so we went ahead and threw in another photo from that perspective. Like I say, we had audio communication with a helicopter that I sent to Abby. I don't know if you got that, but it shows helicopter 500, helicopter 400. So she got a really good perspective. Helicopter 200, it's a radar altimeter, so it's very accurate with what it is above the ground. So unless you were on the computer and you blew this up, it's even hard to see the antennas on the tower from this perspective. So we'll continue around as we go up 133. This one is at the big curve at the very top. So you can see it from this vantage point much better than you could from other one, but that is the proximity that you are in relation to where the tower is. So you can see it above, slightly higher here. This is coming up the other side of McClure from the Somerset side. You can see the helicopter in the top, and that's roughly 200 feet where he is.
So maybe,
It's all of them, yeah.
so we'll pause there before going to
Questions for
Forest.
Chris before we go over?
Yeah.
Greg.
Great, thanks for coming in. Pardon me, I missed lunch, so I'm trying to play catch up. Two things. One, the trail, the old trail, I think is the one that our open space is trying to reopen as part of the bike trail.
Yes,
And I'm sure you're
it is.
coordinating with them on that. Do they know about this? I'm hoping they do.
Yeah,
Assume they
so
do.
fortunately, we were able to conduct a site visit last week,
Okay,
and
great.
Ted joined us.
Excellent.
and-
Actually, oh, great.
Yeah,
Glad you're here. All right.
so I think it was a very productive meeting. We were able to walk a good portion of the trail on both ends and get a perspective of what it is today and what we want to keep it as moving forward and not create an interstate.
And here's another question I had was, it may be not financially feasible, I don't know, but would it be possible to have two sites approximate to each other on either side of the ridge, for instance, so you could put them lower rather than one at the very top?
Build two towers. That, I guess, depending on where.
Not
you're
going to make
talking.
your money back either way. I know
Yeah,
that.
I think it depends on where you're talking as far as if we're running utilities another 6 miles in a different direction, or keeping them relatively close, reducing the height of the overall tower.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Could you reduce the height and walk them off the top of the ridge, serving each different valley? Is that possible, or is that been thought of? Just so it's less visible, because it's still going to stick out. I assume when you're driving over McClure Pass, hopefully your eyes will be on the road anyway and not on the tower.
That's
So
we're
you've
hoping
gotta-
that nobody's going to see it, right, when they come over.
If they're paying attention, they
Yeah.
will. Right, I get it. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, and I think the reason that this location was selected was just because there is an existing tower. There's been previous disturbance. So keeping the impacts as low as we can throughout the entire project was the goal, and not scatter towers where we are now doing 2 years worth of regulatory and NEPA compliance to clear 2 other areas that have not been previously disturbed.
Yeah,
So I think
that'd
that
be
was kind of
painful.
that's the approach.
Kevin could do that for you.
Yeah, and Kevin can speak on that as well.
So in some of our previous efforts, the Forest Service had asked us to look at specific sites on both sides of Highway 133 up and down that ridge. And there was a number of challenges with all those. But as Chris said, this is an existing site, and it also provides the biggest bang for the buck in terms of coverage for us.
Well, and I'll add on one more thought to that, Scott. Where we had proposed initially was right off of Ragged Mountain Road in 133, which is closer, distance-wise, utilities, closer to the highway, much better coverage, where the height could have probably been reduced slightly. However, the visual impact was considerably greater. So there was kind of like a trade-off of, so where do we go? And we continued going back to where the existing site is. It's definitely at least shrouded with a lot of vegetation, and
Right.
yeah, keeps the visual impact as low as we can.
Chris, Francie had a question for you as well.
Actually, I just wanted to respond to Greg saying that if you do try to do this kind of infrastructure on both sides of the pass, you're doing a pretty good rec job on the right side of the pass when you're going up. I mean, that is incredibly beautiful up in there. And this is not just the tower, it's the road going to the tower, it's the whole base area, it's
Yeah.
clearing it for fire suppression, it's the buildings that you're talking about. It's huge.
I understand. Yeah, thank you.
So Chris, before we turn over to Kevin, can I ask you a few questions?
Sure.
Co-location of other services, can we do AI cameras or public radio? Is it the tower, the full height of the tower is already leased?
No, No, in fact, we haven't necessarily marketed much at all because we don't know, right? We don't want to market something we aren't certain of as far as approval process. But as far as the AI, cameras, FCC licensed equipment is preferred just because we can mitigate interference with, the other users on the tower.
And this may be for Scott, because maybe it's going to but there's no vegetation plan in here? If you're doing 6 miles of trenching and boring,
There is a vegetation plan.
it just wasn't in the packet.
No, I didn't include everything
Okay.
from what was submitted to the Forest Service because that's
Cool.
67 pages, I think. And so I was giving it
We
more than
like
30,000.
larger packets.
Huh? Yeah, okay. Well, I'm happy to send them to you.
1,000-page packets.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
And then generator using propane, what are you using?
propane.
So you got to have truck access to get the propane up there every year, or helicopter?
So, truck access. So it's on an existing road, Ragged Mountain Road, and what we do with our mountaintop sites is typically a 1,000-gallon propane tank, fill it up in September. We don't have to access until May or June, and so we don't have to have it wintertime access, unless for some reason commercial power goes out that frequently. But typically, one of our sites has been like at 80% every year. It never burns anything other than just exercising the generator.
We good? Over to Kevin? Thank you.
Yeah, I just have to make a point. I know we have to be concerned about scenic impacts and vegetation impacts and all those things, but I tend to prioritize the protection of human life. And I know we've had significant issues. I've been stuck up there in mudslides on the wrong side of the mudslide with somebody in my car who was disabled, and trying to get him home was impossible. So I went to work, as I was saying, for the sheriff's office at the Redstonian while I was there. I'm helping with cars that were stuck in the mud. But also in emergency responses, backcountry responses. We just had a recent one where nobody communicate, and it was to the point of it could have been a life or death situation. So I think we need to be very careful to take that into consideration when we're trying to weigh the scenic impacts versus the protection of human life.
Well, and I will add one story to that. While we were doing the helicopter work up there, several Carbondale ambulances and fire trucks passed us on the way up to meet at the summit. And when we got up there, they were all circling around in the big parking area. And so I'd asked them, did something happen up here? And they said, well, we're not certain. There was a impact alert, so like an iPhone or an Apple Watch, and they thought someone went off the edge, but nobody had a clue where they were. And so they were circling around asking everybody, do you know if anyone was hurt? Have you seen any cars go off? And I believe it was someone on a bicycle that either dropped their phone or their watch that set off the impact.
Right.
But you got 4 emergency vehicles sitting up there not knowing where to look.
Right.
And so I think everybody you talk to about this has a story of some sort of an emergency that transpired. The gal that got closed in on both sides from CDOT, and they didn't realize that she was in the middle and middle of the winter. And so, yeah, there's been a few instances up there that, are scary for sure.
And if I may,
Please.
like to introduce Chief Goodwin and Deputy Chief Wagner from Carbondale Fire showed up. And I'll also throw in that, so this project was presented to the Gunnison County Planning Committee, and they did approve the project.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Kevin, over to you.
All right. So, for the Forest Service, this is basically a proposal that we've, received. So Kara mentioned the 299. So that's just a form. We're the federal government, so we have forms. And so we require that for just about any type of special use proposal like this. So we've received that, and this particular project spans 2 national forests and 2 counties. And so in this instance, where it spans 2 different national forests, we're actually looking at it will be the forest supervisor of the Grand Mesa, Uncompahgre, and Gunnison National Forest that will be the decision maker here. And so we're working with Chad Stewart over there and his staff on the Paonia Ranger District as well to work together on this project. So we have accepted that proposal, that 299. That doesn't mean that it's greenlit and it's ready to go. That just means that we've received enough information that in enough detail to say, okay, yes, this is something that we can move forward, and so all the information that you just saw up there that Chris presented is in that plus quite a bit more. And so that is the first step for this is getting there. And so we did proactively reach out to the caucus and had a meeting at the caucus. Not their most recent meeting, I don't believe, but
It was
the
March.
yeah.
2 meetings ago.
There you go. Thanks, Francie. Francie was there. And so, took the opportunity to proactively get in front of that group and kind of let them know what was going on, what was being proposed, even though we hadn't quite yet accepted the project. So now we're at the stage where there's a collection agreement that we're working through because in these instances the proponent does pay for the environmental analysis work and all the other work that needs to go on from the Forest Service, and so we're in that stage. That's the next step basically, and the Forest Service won't move forward too much until that we're all signed up on that collection agreement, and we know that we've got we're all solid there. So that's really the next step for us, and then after that. It starts to move into making sure we've got a solid proposal, which I think we're pretty close, and so then the NEPA process starts. So the environmental analysis, the social analysis of this would start. And right now, what we're looking at is the potential of using one of the categorical exclusions that requires a decision memo. So it requires a little bit of documentation beyond just a letter or something like that. But you have to go through and ensure that things like hydrology, wildlife, heritage resources have all been checked off and that they've been analyzed. So that particular categorical exclusion looks at special use permit applications that are 20 acres or less. And so when you add all of this up together, the linear corridor and then the communication site itself, the disturbance for this would be a little under 20 acres. And so therefore we're looking at that as a potential. that would get us started. So then we'd start scoping. So that's our opportunity to specifically request and ask for that public engagement, and that can be a lot of different things in under these categorical exclusions. It's not specified in the way it is for an EA or an EIS. So it could be as little as like reaching out to neighbors in some instances, and it could be as much as, you know, a press release and going to caucus meetings and coming to talk to you guys and doing all those things in an extent where it's a little bit broader. And so that's still to be determined. We haven't spent a lot of time figuring that out yet, since we haven't gotten too far past the acceptance of the 299. So really at that point, then we would move through that process. We're supposed to move through all of our categorical exclusions in about 6 months or less. Sometimes we hit that, sometimes we don't. But that's the expectation, or it has been in the past. There are some new things that are being considered as far as timelines and such for these, and I'm just speaking to what we know for sure right now. Is that generally we would try to move through those in 6 months or less. So I think the biggest thing for me in recognizing the difference. So the majority of what sits in Pitkin County of this project is in the almost exact same alignment as the open space and trails proposal that we worked through the environmental analysis for already. But there's they're two very different projects when you think about it. You think about the amount of on-the-ground disturbance minus the tunnel. Under the open space and trails project, and it's pretty minimal compared to this project. But the use of that area over time is a lot higher. Where in this project, we're looking at a project where the ground disturbance would be quite a bit more, quite a bit larger. But once they're in there and they've finished the project and then done the revegetation work, there's very little need for these guys to get in there and access it again. So two very different projects with different types of disturbance. So there will be a need to do some different environmental analysis because of that, even though it's even though a lot of it's in the same quarter, at least the part on Pitkin County. Once you get up to the top, again, it's the vast majority of this is run right alongside the roadbed. And that's mostly in Gunnison County, I think almost entirely. Yeah. So I think, I don't know, if there are any other questions on process? Kara, did I hit most of it?
No, thank you. I would open it up to the board, and I really appreciate Kevin making the trip too, just to be able to speak to the process, knowing that we're in 2 different counties, 2 different Forest Service districts, and an uncertain world. And I will, as well, if there's any questions for Kevin from the board, and then we also have Ted here from Open Space to speak to the coordination efforts that they've started to look at for the underground path.
I have questions.
Francie.
I have a few. So is this something that Stryker will be contracting, or is this where you're it's a speculative investment? Who pays for all this work?
So speculative is a good word, but also funding through grants and private money. Mm-hmm.
And the payback for you guys is contracts with for cell phone provider things?
The carriers. Yep. So we'll manage it, maintain it. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then when you were in Redstone, I thought you said something about like a 40 by 20 foot building on this space. What is that again?
That's the shelter space for the radio electro equipment. So it's in the drawings if you want to go back to that slide.
Yeah, I looked at the whole packet. I saw it, but I was just wondering. And that requires a great deal of electricity because?
Yeah, we say each tenant typically is around 200 amp service. So we'll normally put in 4 meter banks, 800 amps. And then that way, there are some smaller users, like your camera you were talking about, where they can share the same meter. And so we normally will have a house meter that's accommodating the HVAC units, and then we'll utilize that meter for the smaller tenants and keep the bigger 200 amp service for state, the wireless carriers.
And what are the HVAC units? What are they for?
Air conditioning.
So the whole thing is air conditioned all the time.
I don't want to say all the time, but they're
Well,
set
sometimes
on
they're
a,
heated, probably.
Yeah, they're set on a thermostat, but heat is always the concern, right? Because those radios produce quite a
Right.
bit of heat, so there's HVAC units on the end of the shelter.
And then in terms of your construction, will there be times where you won't be able to construct because of concerns for the fledglings that are in that area that OST has talked about, not being able to work up there at certain times, and the
Yep.
bike path being closed and?
That's right. So that will have an impact on the construction.
Okay, well, that's my questions for right now.
Excellent. Questions or concerns?
The only question I have is this is just for information only at this point? And just to express our interest in seeing where it goes from here?
Yeah, so we wanted to, knowing that there's a presentation shared to the Crystal River Caucus, knowing that there is an impact in Pitkin County with the Open Space and Trails project, one was wanting to come to all of you so you all had the same information about what the project is. And I don't know, maybe that's a good segue and for Kevin of what is, if any, the role of feedback throughout the process from Pitkin County or constituents as this project moves forward.
Yeah, like I said earlier, we will have some scoping that will happen. That's our normal kind of public engagement process. I anticipate, it seems fairly likely anyway, that we would end up, I don't know, Scott, you might not be with the county anymore, but a few of us will probably be at the caucus again, sometime in the next couple of months to during that scoping process to be able to present information again so that they can hear and understand what's going on there. And then, there will be that opportunity for anyone to comment. So that comment could come from the county itself. That comment would come from individuals. We've usually seen comments from the caucus as well, specifically. And so I would anticipate we'd see, something like that. Again, and depending on the timing of it, I just can't tell you exactly when that'll be quite yet. So, but yeah, looking for, if you have any input or any desires for what you would like to see that be, I'm open to that. So while it's not our project, once we accept it and we, the Forest Service, are actually the ones that lead that part and make the decisions around what the public engagement does look like.
Yeah, Patty.
I know you're chairing this, but since we have our sheriff and our telecommunications person, and I know we have others, but we do have some time, and I just want to see if they have any, that's okay.
I welcome the suggestion, and again, to the first responders and to the Carbondale Rural, if you want to approach with any comments, support, we would welcome your input.
This is good over here if you want
We
to.
have time for open space.
I think the mic is on.
Sorry, and Ted, we know you're there. Thank you. And thanks for joining us.
Sure. My name's Rob Goodwin. I'm the fire chief for the Carbondale and Rural Fire Protection
Hi, Rob.
District. Hey. We really do support this. This has been a dream and a project for 20+ years in our minds. Over the years, what I've seen is that we've experienced, I think this would really be a boon to public safety. Many times you'll have accidents or medical emergencies, things like that, and someone will be there, and then they'll have to drive a number of miles in inclement weather, whatever, find a house, with lights on, call 911, all that, and then we finally respond. And on top of that, the communications, radio communications in the Crystal Valley are, to put it generously, are limited with 800 megahertz and stuff like that. So it's incomplete. So as a fire chief, I look at it from a point of view of safety of our people and safety of the public. And I've been there a long time, 30 plus years, and have been on many calls there where the response wasn't quick enough for that individual, and it didn't have a good outcome. And I can't help but think that hopefully if we could have gotten there quicker, maybe it would have been a better outcome. So I support something like this a great deal. I know our board does and our people, and I really appreciate and applaud the efforts over the years, and now coming here, I'm very heartened by this, so thank you.
Can I ask Rob a question?
Yeah, Rob Trancy.
Yeah, Rob, so I've taken students into some of the most remote places in North America, and I've had a satellite phone, and I've gotten reception. So I'm just confused about why we need a 195-foot tower and all this. I'm using the word destruction somewhat. I know you're planning on revegetating, but anyway, to put in this thing when you could use a satellite phone.
Well, I guess I'm not an expert in that on phones, but people drive their cars and ride their bikes and all that and hike. Most of them don't bring satellite phones. And
Well,
just
I
people,
was meaning
people,
between agencies, kind of. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, well, we do have satellite phones, and we have, now we have Starlink, and we can upload and do that stuff. That still doesn't give us the ability to talk on 800 megahertz radios with the Pickens Sheriff, the Gunnison Sheriff, with Colorado State Patrol, other wildfire agencies, stuff like that. We don't. You can do a phone call with someone, but typically on an incident, you might be talking with 3 or 4 or 5 different agencies, right, on the same radio frequency. It's impossible to do that on a phone with any kind of continuity. So
Okay.
in an emergency operation, it would really help.
thank you.
I agree with everything the chief said. I've been up there on plenty of calls, whether they were serious bodily injuries or fatalities. We had to close McClure Pass Labor Day weekend because we thought we had a homicide, and the communications, aka comms, was just horrible. We couldn't talk to Gunnison. We weren't sure if it was a Picken or Gunnison. Just other calls that we've been on, that it's not all about cell phones. This is going to be, again, a big help to cell phone users, including ourselves, but we do have Starlink as well on our supervisors' patrol cars. Again, I equated that if Independence Pass was open 12 months out of the year, we would want the same thing on the top of Independence Pass, because we know we have holes up 82 up to the top of the pass, and we know we have holes on 133 up to McClure. And it's a big public safety issue, and it's a big first responder issue as well. Just communicate with one another while we're responding to that person who was able to now make a cell call saying, something's happened, we need you here.
Excellent.
So again, I support it 100%.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ted, did you want to join us as well? No, please, Sheriff.
Make room.
Good afternoon. I'm Adam Murdy. I'm the sheriff in Gunnison, Colorado, right next door. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Patty, if you don't mind me calling you Patty.
You may call me Patty, sir,
I think
anytime.
you said it best.
Thank you.
Life safety is a priority amongst all of us that wear a badge, whether it's fire, EMS, sheriffs, police, and that's what this is about, is a life safety issue. I don't really have any much more to say other than that, and we appreciate your guys' thoughtfulness and taking everything into consideration for sure. So,
And you do know I'm a little prejudiced about that life safety, since my father-in-law was fire chief over here for 25 years, and my brother-in-law used to call it the Clapper Volunteer Fire Department.
oh, gotcha, nice.
Adam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Afternoon, I'm Chris Stewart. I'm the emergency manager for Delta County. I also serve with our dispatch center. So the even though Delta County is not part of the county where this touches, our 911 dispatch center services the Gunnison County side of the pass. So from Paonia all the way up to the top of McClure Pass is the Delta County's 911 service area. And we work closely with Gunnison Regional Dispatch as well as Pitkin County Dispatch. So back to the point about why we don't use cell phone, sat phones, is that interoperability piece. And when you're on a scene, you can't have fire, EMS, law enforcement pulling out and trying to talk on the cell phone. The cell phone's one-way conversation between two people, not a whole group of people. And that's the benefit of the state DTR system is you can talk from Cortez to Burlington, all across the state with the digital trunk radio system, and the interoperability that this will bring to that black hole of communications on both the Gunnison and Pitkin County side is immense for 911 and first responders. This has been something that Delta County and 911 and emergency management's been supporting Scott on for years that I've been in emergency management, and I fully our sheriff's office, comm center, and emergency management 100% support this plan as well for life safety. So.
Thanks for coming over.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for coming up.
I'm going to go over to Brett next.
Hi, Brett Loeb, 911 Director for Pitkin County. I just wanted to touch on, Scott touched on it a little bit, but the alert and warning system, which is a key piece in my mind of this tower. We did an exercise a couple weeks ago with most of the people here and simulated a wildfire start during a red flag warning at the entrance to Marble. And we had no way to contact any residents in Marble. There's no cell service, there's no iPods, all the typical ways that we send Pitkin alerts are unavailable to us except for landlines. So relying on landlines now, at least in our center, we're getting calls about from 10%, and most of those are businesses. To me, that's obviously communication when they're on the ground, when they're out there, between each other, between the agencies, that's super important, but also the citizens being able to understand what's going on and receive information, I think is a key element. And right now we have no way to contact them.
Thank you, Brett. Ted.
So as the trail guy, OST, we realize the importance of this project. Our rangers depend on these comp sites, so if we get it, we know there's a black hole up there. But it will affect the characteristics of the trail, and that's why I'm here to explain. Is you guys approved a single track trail, public process, the public, that's what they expect. But the impacts on this project will be larger than this. It'll look like a small road for a while. But I was happy to meet Chris Stryker and representatives from the White River and the GMUG to do this site visit the other day, and I think we came up with a way to kind of mitigate those concerns. So at the end of the day, we do end up with a single track trail that your citizens expected. It could take a few years. There's going to be some delays to our construction phases as well. We want them to get their project done before we get in and do the trail stuff. But yeah, I think we have an agreement or working on an agreement to be in communication and working together during their project, so we can place rocks, boulders, what have you, to kind of keep that trail narrow. And also, if there is settling of the platform after construction or re-veg issues, they can come in and help with that, so we're not left with that kind of mess and those costs of those mess. So I think we came to a pretty good agreement on everything, on how to move forward and work together on it.
Thank you. It's good to hear.
Yeah. Wonderful. Final words from Kara.
Maybe I have a question and clarification. Thank you all for being here and for all the work this has been. As you can tell, coordination amongst multiple jurisdictions, multiple counties, multiple efforts and priorities. And so I just know everyone has been coming to the table to try and make the best project happen to address the concerns. Maybe just a clarification, whether it's Kevin or Chris, is currently Gunnison County runs the lease for the communication site. Can you clarify, is the lease transferred and then ownership of all the infrastructure? What's the responsibility as it's layered within the open space trail of who's responsible for that infrastructure and who has that lease within the Forest Service districts?
So in the location, in the specific location where we have a trail that will be under special use permit, we're going to have 2 additional special use permits, because one special use permit in that location will be going to Holy Cross Energy to provide the electric utility to run the communication site. There will be an additional special use authorization issued to, I believe it would be Chris's company, for the fiber optic that would also go in the same trench. And so there would be over in what would be pretty much the same corridor, there would be 3 different special use authorizations. And that's maybe not entirely typical, but it's also not atypical either. We rarely have rights of way or anything that are specific to just one entity that we can't then overlay something else within there as well. So that's the way I would understand it. And then at the top, I'm not for sure if I can answer the question to the communication site itself, whether that would continue to be owned or leased to Gunnison County, or if that would then change to be with Chris's company. I don't know the answer to that. They may. So
We need you on a mic, so we got extra.
It's your project, Scott.
So in conversations with the GMUG, they determined that we would need to transfer the lease from Gunnison County to Aero Marketing, and as soon as this project gets approved, that would happen.
Thank you, Scott. We had a follow-up from Greg as well.
Just a quick one.
And then Francie.
So many different rights of way on that one little trail going up. I'm just wondering, you're probably going to need to keep access to it because something might fail at some point, whether it's a fiber optic line or whatever else is under there. So it seems to me that single track trail will have to be reopenable at a moment's notice.
Well, we kind of asked if they could do it on something that, wouldn't be a UTV or ATV, if they could get in there on an electric dirt bike or something, where we could narrow up that trail corridor and not make it look like a road forever.
Let's hope it doesn't fail in our lifetimes.
And then and that follow-up from Francie, please.
Yeah, well, when Chris presented at Redstone, I asked him about the size of the equipment that's going to be going through these woods, and they're not insubstantial. So I'm assuming that repair equipment would also not be insubstantial. I don't see them carrying a toolkit on the back of a bike. It just doesn't seem realistic to me. But Kevin said he was open to hearing where we stand. I'm obviously not aligned with everybody else in the room. I don't think. But I feel that this is an incredibly invasive project for an occasional emergency that might occur up there, and that if we take so much energy to make every part of our country safe and accessible by satellites and cell phones, and I forget the name of the system you all can talk to each other on, but that kind of thing, we can change a lot of wilderness area and have a lot of impact on other species besides ourselves. And I think for those of us who live in the Crystal Valley and down towards Delta, we expect not to have cell service when we leave Paonia. We're not expecting to be making phone calls until we get to Bill Fales' property coming down towards Carbondale. That's the first place. So I'm really concerned about talking about life safety. It was the same with the towers on the mountains at Skiko. I felt the same way there. I thought it was overkill, that I don't believe any fatalities were ever averted or occurred because they didn't have cell service on the 3 mountains. I think, sure, there's an occasional accident up there, and the loss of life is a hard thing, but I think loss of wilderness is also a hard thing. So I will probably never support this, and I will be in opposition to all of you. I recognize that, but I just think we can't make every square inch in our country safe, and nor should we want to. I mean, there are other kinds of experiences besides driving along and picking up your cell phone. I have a hard time with it. I really appreciate the expertise from all of you and your attention to emergencies. I would hate it if I didn't have access to emergency response. And I just feel like this is such a huge project. There's got to be a better way, especially with increasing technology. And like the people in Marble could probably all have phone service off of their Wi-Fi through Starlink without tearing up this big wilderness area. That's the way I feel. So, thank you.
I'd like to thank Delta, Gunnison, Pitkin, and Carbondale for joining us, and thanks for coming together and sharing ideas from the Valley. So I really appreciate everyone's time. Kevin.
I just
And
wanna
sorry,
make,
and the
no,
U.S. Forest
I wasn't.
I already added him in under my breath.
I just wanted to make one clarification to Francie's comment, and it's about wilderness. So there's the what we think of as little W wilderness, which is just the out of doors that people enjoy, and then there's what in the Forest Service and other federal agencies we think of as what big W, or congressionally designated wilderness. And this particular project, the disturbance area anyway is not within congressionally designated wilderness. I don't know enough about exactly where the cellular projection and those kinds of things would go into. I would imagine because of the proximity to the Raggeds Wilderness that it would be lit up in some ways from that. But just to make sure this project is not being proposed in congressionally designated wilderness.
Thank you for that clarification.
That's okay. It's common. Thank you.
Anything further for Kevin or Scott?
Just glad you came. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Good,
guys.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Sorry, and Pitkin Open Space.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. And you must have had a beautiful drive over. Yeah, we planned it that way for you.
You'll find that to be a luxury.
Yes. Thank you again.
All right, thanks. Good to see
Thank
you
you.
all. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Betty.
Next time, I loved the rain, though.
What's it?
I loved the rain.
I think Francie and I are getting.
Maybe we should do it again soon so it'll rain.
Okay, all right, perfect.
Entire road. So shocked. Great to see you, Rob. Sorry I disagreed with you.
I don't care. That's fine. We all got all our own. Yeah, it's all good.
Really appreciate the work you do. I hope you don't have to do too much this summer. Not looking good.
See you soon.
And get me.
Hey, Jeffrey, let's move.
Yes, hi there. Okay.
A lot of people.
Get this.
You can clear them out of here if you're in a hurry.
Because of the disturbance.
Actually, we have time at the end of the day.
When they saw this from.
No, I want to get out of here.
Oh my God.
It's too nice out.
I know. It's too nice to be indoors.
I've got
We should
plants
have-
aching to go in the garden, but it's supposed to snow.
Can we put big garage doors here so we could just open them in the nice part of the summer?
I like the library, just put them back.
Yeah, so nice.
Let's redesign them.
It's time for a remodel. How old is this place?
2018. we
Yeah,
opened it.
God, it's time. We need a remodel. We want to take out this wall and put a big glass garage door, that opens.
That'd be nice.
I'd spend more time here.
Yeah, would you?
Actually, it throws off the whole environmental nature of the interior of the building, energy
I'll be
use.
switching you. No, you can stay
We'll
here.
seal the rest of the building off.
Exactly, perfect. The summer is all right.
There's people trying to get over to the
Thanks for coming.
courthouse. They always walk by and turn around and walk back.
Right.
You look so serious.
David, do you want to join us as well, since it's RAFTA?
Yeah, I think he's gonna sit here.
Just
Yeah.
give me a sec.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Take your time.
And Linda, you wanna join us,
There's room.
I'm okay back
I knew she was, I just knew she was gonna
It's the
say.
dry run for Thursday, come on.
Yeah, we could throw some hardballs at her.
Yeah, but I won't be here, so come join us. I'm gonna get that award on Thursday. Mhm. I'll let you know how the video goes.
What?
Thanks for your feedback.
Yeah.
I'm glad it was said.
I was really shocked when I
Good.
first heard this, Christopher Cox.
Yeah,
And
all on
you
the
can
same
wear 'em.
day.
Next Thursday is our special meeting day. I'm gonna do that.
You do know you're
They have
the airport
If I
money.
can do it, if I can do it remotely, that's what.
What are you gonna be?
Yeah, you told us that. Thank you. So we're maybe closer to 4 o'clock.
Go.
I'm sorry. No, you're good.
Life's too short.
One work session next week, I can call in.
I had one person today said, I lived in 2 neighborhoods, what can I do?
Jeffrey's gonna be at CCI. I've got jury duty
On the 22nd.
on 1st of June up there.
I'll be at spots.
Yeah.
You know,
Our obsession with cell phones.
I was going to join remotely because I'm going to be in Utah.
With your boy.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Dave Pezinchek.
So David, when
Who's
open
gonna cover?
space and trails come in, they all come in
Because
like in
he can be
cartons.
there in person.
So, remember when they presented their budget? They all came in like, it was like one big
Oh,
Land's
so
End. It was
great.
like a Land's End commercial. It was pretty funny.
They all had on their plat shirt.
Oh, I was gonna say Eddie Bauer.
Sorry. But it was really well done by Open Space. It was like,
They all had
Yeah.
lumberjack and
You guys should at least have RAFTA shirts on.
it made, you know,
RAFTA store now.
it made budget season really
No,
enjoyable.
my daughter just got all the RAFTA swag for cleaning the trail
Where'd you get money
for her
from
kids
there?
at her school.
Where'd you get money from there?
What'd she get?
Tracy Turner, it's Tracy Turner and Sustainable Teaching. Or, no, Teachable Moments.
What did she?
They clean up the trail from 27th Street to Buffalo Valley. 40-something bags of trash.
What kind of swag did she get?
They got hats, and they got bells, and they got notepads, and they got pins, and they got pizza. Usually they get donuts with sprinkles. 3 or 4 guys from Rafter were there with all the kids.
Are we
waiting for something?
Yeah, they're
cleanup on the
pretty
trail.
much-
And she adopted that section of trail.
We might take a break for her
Okay.
IT.
Who we waiting for? Karen?
It's that kind of day. It's owls and,
On the other side of the pass,
Owls and
it's a
Dells.
straight shot.
so I would say Andorra, but who's ever in the glass box? We were taking a 5-minute recess.
Diana.
Isn't it
Diana.
Andorra? Oh, Andorra.
I know, we're taking a 5-minute recess.
So the surface transportation letter thing, do you have any input?
I'm gonna call Hillary.
Good afternoon. It's 2:16 p.m. on Tuesday, May 13th. This is the work session of the Board of County Commissioners. We apologize for our tardiness. It was due to Bill Gates. The next agenda item is RAFTA's Fall 2025 Zero Fare Program. Great. Thanks for joining us.
I'll just kick it off. I'm Brian Pettit. I'm the Public Works Director, and maybe we'll just go down the row and introduce yourselves to the board.
I'm David Johnson. I'm the Director of Sustainability and Legislative Affairs for RAFTA.
I'm Dave Pesnichek. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for RAFTA.
Linda Dupriest.
She's the music director.
Linda Dupriest, EOTC Director.
Great. So today is a precursor to our EOTC meeting that's coming up Thursday at 4 at the town of Snow Ash Village. So RAFTA, since the Zero Fare pilot program was talked about maybe a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, it seems like RAFTA's been on a roadshow ever since looking for funding to provide this pilot program. So I think there's an up valley effort and a down valley effort going on simultaneously. So we get the Davids in the up valley effort. So with that, we'll kick it to RAFTA and you guys can walk us through your presentation. Okay. There is no decision point today. This is merely for information for the board.
Yep. Thanks.
Yep.
So just a little background on this Zero Fare pilot program. This originated as a climate action strategy from RAFTA's Climate Action Plan. The strategy was to offset regional greenhouse gas emissions by boosting ridership without increasing the number of buses needed to do that. So the idea was to offer fare-free service during off-peak times. It has evolved a little bit. The original idea was maybe to look at concentrating the fare-free service during RAFTA's truly off-peak times, which is, as you can imagine, would be like middle of the day, late evening. We decided as we were considering this that the fall season is generally also, in general, an off-peak time as opposed to summer and winter. And we wanted to look at impacts throughout the day if we reduce fares or went fare-free. So we have decided to offer this Zero Fare program during the fall, during our fall off-peak season from October 1st to November 30th. For all regional fare routes, which are the Velociraptor BRT service, the Valley Local, and the Hogback service. Maroon Bells is not included in that. Because of the evolution in our thinking, we did not program the extent of this fare-free pilot into our 2025 budget, and because of the magnitude of the program, 2 months entirely fare-free. We are looking for financial partners to backfill the estimated $550,000 in lost fare revenue, and that's what we'll be bringing to the request that we will be bringing to the OTC. But we wanted to make sure that you all were aware of this prior to the EOTC meeting.
And provide a little bit more context in terms of how we got to this point. So the 10 to 2, that was an idea that was floated that was contemplated that was something that we could do long term to try to move people from peak times to off-peak times. What we heard from our board was enthusiasm to try to make this really experiment with true fare-free. And what does that mean? As you know, there were some programs, and I know David will talk about this here in a few more minutes, that the state put out around ozone days that we weren't able to take advantage of because we were really concerned about our peak times. So what this pilot will allow us to do is to be able to gather that information, and that's really become the focal point here, is to see what is that elasticity for the number of passengers that might be drawn to transit if there were no fares. So when we reduce that barrier, how many more passengers can we expect? And then being able to extrapolate that out to possibly winter season or summer season, or something that we might be able to institute more long term. That was somewhat how this evolved from let's do a small thing to move people from peak time to off-peak time to if we want to do this for real, then we really need that information. So we've been doing a lot of background research, and I know David will talk about this here in a few more minutes, in terms of what we found from other agencies. We also found that communicating out 10 to 2 to customers, as we got into the details of it, is remarkably difficult. And so going to just the whole service is free the whole day, all day long, is much easier. So one of the complications, for instance, is does 10 start when the bus leaves West Glenwood, or does it start when the customer gets on, and how do they know? And are there customers on that did pay, some that didn't pay? So those were some of the issues that we're trying to avoid by making it all day long. Sorry.
Greg. I want to keep going. Can I throw a couple of questions out at the beginning? You can get to them whenever you want to answer them.
Sure.
One was just regarding the thing that I was so intrigued about with the 10 to 2. No.
Now it is. The 10 to 2 is just that I keep imagining that if there's some way we could just flatten the demand curve enough to spread the load out a bit, it might reduce. It would require employers changing their hours of operation, things like that. But I think that's still a worthwhile conversation to have as we're trying to demand management. So I was intrigued by that. I hope we get back around to it someday. The other question was, what is the percentage of lost fare revenue represents of the cost of operations? Did I say that right? I think I meant to ask,
I got it.
Thank you. Good. If you got it, we're good.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll take a stab at both. I think the first question was
Demand management.
Come on.
Flattening the demand
curve.
curve.
The flattening of the curve. Thank you. I forgot the second question already, but that's okay. We'll come back to it.
I'm the same way.
It's certainly something that we can look into. And when we were looking at 10 to 2, that time period, that probably would not have been a very good case study, because I think that the traditional peak commute hours, roughly 6 to 9. Right. Could you actually get that spread all the way to 10 o'clock? That could be a challenge, but at least we can certainly, at least we'll be able to see how patterns change closer maybe to the 9 o'clock time period, or 8:30 or whatever, or even earlier, just to see how.
Right.
What happens there.
It'll be quite useful, I think.
And then the other question was
the percentage of your operating. What's the percentage of? I should know this already. I apologize. I don't. The percentage of, what does the lost revenue, $550,000 in 2 months, represent as the overall cost of doing business for those 2 months?
That's why I couldn't remember, because I don't know.
Okay. That's good.
It's a good question, though.
Yeah, fare revenue represents about 5%.
5% of operating.
Overall, yeah.
Okay, that's the question I wanted to ask you. Thank you.
This would be like $6 million a year if you did it.
Yeah, I think we get about $5 million
Yeah.
a year, and it represents,
Great. Okay, sorry for the interruption, but that was
Thank you for letting me
plaguing me.
So, any opportunities and constraints, what we're seeing is we definitely see going from having a fare to fare-free, we will definitely see an increase in ridership. And because we are targeting this fall season, which is traditionally a lower ridership season, peak and off-peak, we do believe that we can accommodate the ridership without having to increase the number of buses on the road, and then what we call Scope 1 emissions. We don't have to increase our emissions to accommodate that ridership.
Can
we'll
you
also see an
expand on
increase.
Because can you expand on that? Seems impossible to me.
For this fall period, if this were peak summer and peak winter and we instituted fare free, we would have to add more buses.
Okay.
Because this is fall, we do believe that during this, and actually, even into September, we have a lot of ridership. Because we're doing it October and November, we do believe that we can accommodate the additional passengers.
But so you'll have a bus schedule similar to summer, not similar to fall, is what you're saying?
No, we will still have that. We will have the fall. We will have the fall service schedule.
Oh.
And if I can't speak for our operations, but we do have the ability to add buses. How much I don't know, but
Okay.
we believe that we can accommodate this. Will there be some people standing possibly during the peak periods? Yes, but I don't think we're going to see like an X Games sort of situation as a result of going fare free during the winter during this time. Do you want to say anything?
I'd just add that this is the first year in a long time that we're actually fully staffed in terms of operators. So another reason why this year and not previous years is we didn't feel as though we would be able to back up our buses in previous years simply because we didn't have the drivers to be able to do so, or we couldn't reliably have those drivers to do that. So we're in a lucky position right now where we have the driver base to be able to do it. We do back up a number of our buses now. So we track, well, really all of our buses are tracked in terms of capacity. So when they start hitting capacity, we have other buses out there to be able to come out and back up those buses. Now, there's still issues in that they're not scheduled buses. So people only see one bus on their schedule, so they're still trying to cram in. But when you see, say, bus following on a head sign, that means that another bus has been dispatched to pick up those passengers that aren't able to be accommodated by that first bus.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, speaking of that, another opportunity here is just the information gained. What is the ridership elasticity going to look like? What will the change in fare? How will the change in fares impact the ridership off peak, peak times, various times throughout the day? This is a good opportunity for us to actually test that in the real world and see what it looks like during the 60-day off peak period. Some of the cons are we do need to backfill that $550,000 in fare revenues. I think our previous slide, we talked about joyriders. I've kind of reframed that. We could generate non-necessary trips that conflict with higher priority needs, particularly during peak times. If it's fare free, maybe you just jump on the bus just for the heck of it while people are trying to get to and from work. The not so necessary could impact our regular commuters getting a seat or something like that. That's something that we're going to look at. And related to that, we could see some standees during our peak periods.
Joyriding on a bus.
Yeah,
Joyride.
Are you going to know who's? Are you going to say where you're
I just
going
wanna
when they
get
get on the bus?
Well, as a matter of
You know
fact,
that.
we are also, in addition to, this is an opportunity to gain some information. We want to maximize our opportunity to see how this all works. So not only are we going to collect quantitative data, like we'll look at the boardings and alightings, and we'll look at that stuff. But we're also planning to do a passenger survey where we can gain some other information like origin, destination, trip purpose, opinions of passengers on how this is all going.
And who's going to be doing that? You have to scan a QRS code? 'Cause
No,
people are
we
not
will
gonna
be
do
doing.
that.
Yeah, we will very likely do another onboard survey. We did do a pretty comprehensive onboard survey in March, and it's a pretty big questionnaire, and it covers all routes. This survey would be shorter. It would only cover the 3 fare routes, and it would be a much shorter.
Survey itself.
Yeah, survey itself. We like to get information from passengers, but we don't like to overburden them either. We don't want survey fatigue. We don't want people saying, "I don't want to use the bus anymore." I don't care if it's free. People keep coming and asking me questions. We don't want that. So, we're going to be mindful of that. But we will very likely be doing a survey, short survey. Where else was I? Oh, yeah, refunds. This is probably more of an operational thing to RAFTA, but we are selling passes right now, and we'll have to find a way to refund or credit or somehow make people whole that have purchased the season pass and for this 7-month period and now find that 2 months of that 7-month period is fare free. So we're working on that.
Is that included in the 550,000 you're asking for?
Well, I just say the $550,000 is basically an estimate of the lost revenue we will see from existing the lost revenue we will experience from those 2 months of service for the cash paying customers and the 2 months worth of season passes that we're going to have to somehow.
Okay, so that's refund is included in the 550.
Francie.
I think you guys might have said this at the meeting last week, but I've forgotten if you did. So are you asking for financial help from the members of RAFTA? So like not Garfield, but all the other members?
Yeah, we're asking, yes. In short, yes.
Okay.
I'd
And
ask
anybody
Garfield, too.
outside of the members of RAFTA?
No.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Like Garfield?
Like Garfield?
I
Garfield
would-
is not a member.
Yeah, I'm following your train of thought there. And I think Garfield, since we're servicing Hogback, and that we should say, hey, you guys want to see how this goes? Help us out.
So part of what we're working up against here to try to get this done this fall is we actually need to decide whether we're moving forward by this Thursday. So
Well, I think you should ask Garfield County for funds.
As we got through the planning and trying to get this done this fall, in order to get the outreach done and all of the agreements in place in time to be able to have all of that out, we need to make a decision here this week as to whether we're moving forward. So our backup plan is if we're not able to secure the funding this week, we'll be looking at 2026. So that's
Should ask Garfield County for funds.
and going down that road, that will give us more time to be able to ask more members. Right now, it's really focused on the city of Aspen and EOTC as the primary funders. Understand that city of Glenwood Springs might be able to put in some funding, but that is also not secured yet. So we're trying to pull this all together as quickly as possible in order to make it happen this year. Doesn't mean that nothing will happen this year. What we're hoping to do is be able to get something done by the end of 25 so that we can potentially continue something into 2026 and have that as a part of a regular budget cycle.
Our Aspen board member, Rachel, suggested that she was going to try to get $200,000 from the city of Aspen, as I understand.
We're meeting with them after this.
Got it.
Oh, it's that day.
That's what's happening. Good.
Yeah, I'm concerned. I think the information you're going to gain is, what are we going to do with it? Because we can't offer year-round free service. We don't have the bus drivers, we don't have the
Yes,
buses.
we could.
We don't have the money. There's a lot of obstacles, I think. We could offer it. How do we pay for it? How do we fund more buses, more bus drivers? From talking to people who travel the corridor a lot, who use buses to commute, the buses are full. They're standing room only. The buses pass about. There's no parking in the parking lots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My family uses it all the time to come from Glenwood or Carbondale up in the mornings to go to ski company work or in the afternoons to come home. And it's crazy, packed, which is a good thing. But how do we deal with that if we make it free and more people ride, which is good for the environment and all of that, and get people off the highway. But we have to look at how we're going to fund it. Pickens County doesn't really have any more money left because our money's all going out already for transportation, and we're not going to tap our general fund if I have anything to do with it to take those monies. So I think trying this will be interesting. $550,000 for the data we're going to get. I don't know if it's worth the bang for the buck. And so tomorrow I will ask, because not tomorrow, but Thursday, I will not be at EOTC. I'm so sorry. I will be accepting an award for the preservation of the county courthouse down in Denver. But as of right now, unless we get more partners into the funding from the valley-wide that it services, I will not be supporting it if I was there.
But I would add to that, Patty.
Quick reply from David and then over to Francie.
Okay.
You go.
Okay. We hear everything that you're saying, and that is the reason why we believe that this pilot is so important. Partly because there's there's been a number of different experiments going fare free on a number of different systems, including, so Core Transit now is predominantly fare free except for a couple of routes. They just got rid of fares. Grand Valley Transit has tried it as a part of the Ozone. RTD has tried it. And the numbers that we've seen are impressive in terms of the increase in ridership, which made us nervous. But when we think about our fare structure and the number of commuters that we have that are really filling up those vehicles during those peak times, we believe a lot of them are riding on commuter passes, which means that they won't be impacted one way or the other whether we have free fares or don't have free fares. So that's part of what we really need to figure out is, are those buses still going to be full whether we have free fare or not? Is our elasticity the same as Core Transit, the same as RTD, and the same as Grand Valley Transit? And we haven't done the experiment to be able to say yay or nay or to what extent. So it may be that these numbers come back and we say, boy, we just can't accommodate this. They might come back and we say, well, it looks like our numbers are very different than Core Transit or than GVTA.
Where is Core Transit?
Eagle Valley.
Eagle.
Oh, and RTD is Denver, which doesn't really have a seasonality to it, I don't think.
They don't. And this is a number of different things that we're taking into consideration here. So if we can figure out what our elasticity is through the day, hour by hour through the day on the different routes, we would then have a better idea. If we were able to go fare free, does it have to be a 10 to 2? Does it have to be an off season? How many buses would we have to add if we wanted to add it during a peak season? And how many more drivers would that mean? So those numbers are very important for us to be able to say whether we could do this or couldn't do this.
I guess I don't see how you're going to do a comparison to the off-season to the on-season with numbers, because we may have more people riding in the off-season, be it for work or for joyriding. But it's just a different animal.
There is definitely some
Yeah.
differences there that we would need to work through.
Yeah, and I think that's of concern. And again, the funding is of concern. That's a lot of money for a 2-month try. But so that's where I stand, but I appreciate the effort.
Francie.
Well, fortunately for RAPTA, Pat is only one member of our board.
Well, fortunately, okay.
Pretty sure Greg and I will be supporting this in whatever way we possibly can. But if RAPTA doesn't grow, then how do we make an impact on congestion? RAPTA has to grow. There's just no question about it. I mean, transit is obviously one of the major ways of dealing with our traffic congestion. So I look forward to RAPTA growing. And as RAPTA grows and we don't have this administration, there'll be more grants available to us and it'll be fine. I mean, $32 million as a grant was amazing, and there'll be more like that. It's not going to be forever that funds aren't obligated, I mean, it's going to change. And so I believe in the growth of RAPTA, and I'll do what I can to see if we can get some of this money for you. Obviously not all of it.
Greg.
Yeah. One of the beneficiaries you didn't mention, Patty, were virtually all the riders who were going to have free fares, which may be significant savings for them. So it's not like we're throwing money at a survey. This is actually going to benefit all the commuters who are coming up and down the valley, first of all. Second of all, if we can make a tiny dent in commuter traffic, it frees up the highways dramatically. Brian may know this, maybe you guys know this. What percentage does the volume of traffic have to change in order to make it flow freely? Some people say it's 5 or 7% or something. It's a tiny difference can make the difference on a highway if that fewer people are traveling. So I think there's a lot of benefit to it, and Francie does point out, it's an essential service. It's going to need to grow as our population grows dramatically, and we've got to figure this out. So, I will be supporting it, and I'm eager to still experiment with demand management, flattening that curve in one way or another. So I'm looking forward to it, and it's a big nut, and it's a tall ask, and I do think we should be reaching out to all the other employers in the valley who might think it's a good idea to help their employees get to work.
Jeffrey, real quick.
And then back to
Yeah,
David
well,
for
again,
closing
a lot
comments.
of the riders in this fall will be getting refunded for their passes that they already have. So they're riding. It's a not necessarily a cost savings for everybody who's going to be riding the free service. I mean, some of them are, weren't paying anyway, they're going to get refunded back. But that's one thing said. The other thing, I'm concerned that you and Francie have made up your minds already because you sit on the RAFTA board and you've been part of this discussion, and now you're going to vote again on Thursday as members of EOTC. So
That's how it
I
works.
have concerns running with many decisions we make about conflicts with other boards we sit on. And when we've already made up our mind before we come back to our core board, which is the Board of County Commissioners.
David, Linda, Brian, any final comments before we move
Thanks,
over to
Jeffrey.
our lobbyist?
What was that order again? No, I got it. I'll breeze through this. How to measure success, whether you're for and against, we are going to look at, through this pilot program, we're going to look at measures of success include increased boardings, yet not too much, hopefully minimal impacts to our bus capacity. Hopefully everyone that gets on the bus still can get a seat and can still be comfortable, still have a good experience using RAFTA during this time. Obviously minimal requirements for additional buses. And we hope that we'll get positive customer feedback from this. We will be measuring, we will be comparing boardings from fall of 2024 to this time period, estimating the greenhouse gas offset, and looking at the bus volume to capacity ratio as number of seats available, and as I said before, staff and customer feedback. We'll be looking at this, as close as we can during the pilot program. We talked about this. I think we did estimate as best as we can the changes in ridership based on what we saw, what these other agencies experienced during the 3-month pilot program that they did with fare-free service, 30 to 40% increase. That's what we're estimating.
When did they do their
Can you
zero
go back to that
fare?
again? Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I ask the date when they did their zero fare?
Yeah, this was the data we got was from this ozone, from a grant program that CDOT offered during the summer. I think it started in 2022, and I think it's still going
You're saying
on.
it wasn't shoulder seasons, it was on seasons.
It was peak season, and it was for the summer season, and we chose not to do it because that's our peak season.
It's a different comparison.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, right. It's a peak season versus off peak.
Okay, that's all I need to hear.
So for Brian, is there any way to look at reduced traffic count over the same period, since we have these wonderful new, AI traffic counters sitting everywhere in the valley now?
Absolutely, and Linda's going to be describing that system on Thursday, so we'll be looking at traffic volumes then.
That's a good idea.
That's awesome.
sure.
Yeah,
And
good question.
And I'm glad, we talked about the differences at the board from a support standpoint here, because we have a jammed EOTC agenda on Thursday, and it'd be great for this board to understand each other's differences and where you're going to rest on that decision on Thursday.
Real quick, the comparison of data, though, we don't have those cameras from last year. We only have them from this year. They just got put in. So we can't compare to last 2024 off-season in the fall.
We could see if one of the cameras we had some in the ground in the fall. They weren't
Right.
completely audited. We can look at that. But yeah,
We
it
get some
probably
close to, but
wouldn't
not
be
quite.
reliable. Yeah.
And can the EOTC budget handle it, since I won't be here on Thursday? At 300, 400, who knows how many hundreds of
Our
thousands?
fund balance right now, I don't have the number in front of me because I didn't know I was going to need it, but it's north of 16 million.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Oh, one last thing. Can I
Mr.
say something?
Postman.
You guys took a hydrogen-powered bus to the Roon Bells this week, and nobody told me about it. And I was thinking, wow, did anybody tell you about it? Nobody told Francie about it. You guys are in trouble now. I just want to say that. I didn't get to ride on the hydrogen-powered bus.
We might have had a 24-hour notice when New Flyer had it at
I
our
figured as
TV,
much.
and
Very
we
cool.
found out that we might be able to get it up there. And
Very exciting.
luckily,
Was there water coming out the tailpipe?
Yeah, that's what
there
I want to
was-
know,
yeah,
exactly.
There's
the water.
actually, there's steam coming out the top by the time we got to Maroon Bells.
Cool.
That's pretty scary. A steaming hydrogen-powered bus makes me a little nervous.
So it's basically, I don't know.
It has lithium batteries also.
Yeah, I was
Doesn't
gonna
it
say
really
it's
make
basically a
sense?
battery electric bus with a hydrogen fuel cell that charges the batteries.
Mhm.
Very
Is
exciting.
there any way to collect the water, put it back in the river?
You could.
We get credit for it.
But where do we fuel them? Do we have a hydrogen fuel?
That's the big conundrum.
There's the
right
rub.
now.
That's it.
Therein lies the rub.
Really water intense.
I understand that
doing
this was the highest a hydrogen bus had been in the continental United States.
You know
Oh,
what?
no
I'm
kidding.
tired of leading the way. Let somebody else do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Thanks.
We'll hear more.
Nice to see you.
Is the board okay going directly to the lobbyist update and skipping a break?
I'm okay with
Yeah,
that.
we've got time at the end of the week.
So are you gonna do this presentation again on Thursday night, David?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, well, I'll be twiddling my thumbs.
I'll try to go
You get to vote on it
No,
3
don't.
times.
Don't. 3 times in 1 week is a lot, though.
I think I can probably go like 30 minutes. I don't have the time. It's just a wrap up. So if
I have
y'all
a
wanna
question,
take,
though.
Looked like a ton in the packet.
That's the idea. Yeah.
Thank
That's
you,
a
Levi.
standard
Thank you. I
packet.
love it when people come in and offer that.
Try to get you back on schedule.
Brevity is the soul of wit, as we say, as I say.
So if
Can
you
I-
want to take a break, by all means, I
No,
can,
we're
I can
going-
be done by 3:30.
We're going straight to legislative update, please.
All right. Just remember, you asked.
Congratulations on your promotion.
Right on schedule.
Promotion.
Resume promotion.
I'll take what I can get.
Can I ask a really quick right off the start question? We talked about it earlier today. Was there a bill related to how many people can live in a residential household?
Yeah.
Residential occupancy limits was last year, last
That's
session.
what I thought.
Yeah, that's where.
Prohibit
Did it pass
residential-
last year?
Yep, it passed last year.
No, nobody in the room actually knew for sure. I wrote it down as a
Agreed,
question.
agreed.
Thank you.
I've forgotten the number, Patty, I'm sorry.
But did it apply to mobile homes?
I don't think it made a distinction. I think the only distinction it made was within the safety realm of water wastewater and water
So
systems.
if you could handle it, you can handle it.
So it's a fluid number, it's not specific.
A
it depends
fluid
on the
number.
Wastewater. I really didn't intend to do that, but.
I'm trying to remember how the verbiage of that went. I think if it was on a septic, then septic systems are rated for the amount of bedrooms or occupancy. So you're not supposed to exceed that, and probably a CDPHE rule somewhere.
Okay.
All right, if we're ready to go, I'm ready to go.
All right.
Good afternoon, Board. Levi Borst, Management Analyst for Pickens County. And I'm here today just to do a quick legislative wrap-up, Part 1, as the legislative session ended last Wednesday. Oh, you're just about rid of me for a little while about this same topic. As we've talked, our session began on January 8th, and this year our legislature put forward 657 bills, down somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 bills fewer than last year. You can see the breakdown by chamber, and then the session ended May 7th. A few general overall highlights. The budget package was signed by the governor at the end of April, and the rumors already abound we'll have a special session to look forward to, because as we talked, a lot of the budget reconciliation was just moving numbers around and not really necessarily addressing the programmatic problems that that we're limited by, and so our programming will have to change or our revenue will have to change. So this session, we took 9 specific legislative positions at the state level, engaged in written advocacy, and a few different instances of testifying in person or on the phone, or Zoom, I suppose it was. As member organizations that we're members of, engaged on many more bills. And we also engaged on a few different federal outreach efforts, and we've got a few in the works, and there will be more to come, so don't worry. Hopefully your packet had the CCAT, CCI, CC4CA list of bills, and that's the encyclopedia that you're probably talking
It
about.
did.
I'm sorry.
This is great, though, this summary that you have. I really like that. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. So I'll just jump into the bills or matters that we actually took active positions on. The increased access to homeowners insurance enterprises, as you remember, there were two different enterprises, kind of the hail damage side and the wildfire side. We took a position of support, and this died in Senate Finance. From what I understand, this was a victim of enterprise fatigue. There were so many bills going through the legislature this year that had enterprise funding attached to them. By the time this got there, finance just wouldn't stomach it and killed it. So, you know, it was a good concept, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more of this next year. Hopefully we take another crack at it and maybe get it through sooner or find a more creative funding mechanism, something that can help us sort of chip away at the insurance problem in the state. But that was a bummer. Risk model use in property insurance policies. We took a position of support on this one, and it did pass.
Was it signed?
So I didn't make a distinction about that, so I have to asterisk all of the bill passed.
So do I.
Yeah, because a lot of them have gone through and been signed by the president or the speaker and are awaiting governor's signature, or the governor has signed, and I just didn't have time to break them down by...
Next time.
Yeah, part two.
Part two, thank you.
Make sure I get invited back. The Data Center Development and Grid Modernization Act. And this was the tax incentives for data centers that essentially offered effectively nothing to use a ton of energy and water. So we took a formal oppose, and this died and lost, so that was a good thing. And now we saw this last year and this year, so safe to say we'll see some version of it again going forward, but maybe we can work in some kind of water provisions or some kind of better renewable energy provisions or some way to make this a little less offensive. Regional Transportation Authority sales and use tax exemption. We took a position of support, and it did pass.
Fantastic.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Especially on the heels of your last conversation and your last speaker. As a guy who rides RAFTA every day, I'm excited about that.
And we we redid the roadway into housing and had to pay taxes for the contractor and stuff and everything on that, so, and it was a lot of money, so that was great.
And that was,
I don't know if it'll be
72.
retroactive, but.
Well, and it's an interesting philosophical discussion. We've heard some different comments in CCAT, I think it was, of at what point does everybody get a sales and use tax exemption, and where are you really limiting your revenue? Does building housing, is it part of an essential function of a transit authority? Well, if they can't hire bus drivers because they have no place to live, then you can argue yes. Same with fire departments and sheriff's offices and things like that. But it's just kind of an interesting thing to
and
think
it got
about.
signed.
I think that one did get signed. Funding for motor vehicle collision prevention. This was the vulnerable road user bill, everybody's favorite term. We supported this. Again, it wasn't going to be a ton of money. We likely wouldn't have seen a huge influx of cash, but I think it was a way to do something about the wildlife crossing and vulnerable road user funding problems that we see in the state. And this surprisingly died in, was it Senate Finance? I think CC4CA was pretty upset about that. They thought they had more allies in that committee than the votes reflected. So at our last meeting, I don't know if crestfallen is too hyperbolic a term, but they were pretty upset about this bill failing. So once again, spoiler alert, I'm sure we'll see some version of this come back, and maybe with some more stakeholding in the interim, we can have more success this year, next year. Support against adverse federal action, and we supported this, and it did pass. So I think that was a good thing. I think, as I remember, that's $4 million appropriated to defense of federal actions that might be brought against the state of Colorado from the federal government.
Hopefully that'll be enough.
Not for the ones that we've brought against the administration? It won't help support those?
I read it in that it would be actions taken against us, not that we initiated.
Okay.
I think we have to pay for ours. Automated permits for clean energy technology. So initially we were opposed to this. If you remember, there were a lot more provisions in this bill that required use of a certain software system and integration problems and bridge software problems and all kinds of issues. So we were against this. I think, Jeffrey, did you testify on this one? And we got a huge strike below, essentially, and all that remained was extending the grant period. So if you chose to use a new software, you could apply for a grant, and now that term is longer than it initially was. So we're ultimately ended in a monitor, but because we got everything that we wanted out of that, I think I'll call that a success. So
Yeah.
I call that one a win, even though I guess monitor doesn't really have a win category. The county lodging tax expansion, and this was one that didn't affect us in a huge way here because we don't have a ton of unincorporated lodging tax revenue sources, but I think as far as just sort of a
Regional support.
yeah, I think it aligns with our values to allow counties to diversify revenue generation. So we supported that, and it also passed. I think I mentioned last time Senator Roberts got the percentage amount raised back from 5% to 6% in the Senate. So I call that a pretty huge win. I think some of our friends in Summit County and across the Western Slope are pretty excited to have this as an option.
We were waiting, pending, holding our breath about the governor signing it, though there was some iffiness. So
no.
that's one I would really like to.
It's just permission to put it on a ballot, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You still have to get voter
Up
approval.
to, you don't have to do it for 6%. It could be to 4.5%.
Yeah, could
Yeah.
go up to 6, yeah.
Yeah. But it was being held and everybody was on pins and needles as to, this came out of Northwest Cog, was whether or not it was gonna get actually signed, so.
Well, I can click on that link and I guess
Yeah,
we
that
can-
would be great.
we can
You
look.
don't have to do it right now.
Okay.
I will find you later.
And maybe this was our final position issue, was to require the General Assembly to test Tabor with a constitutionality lawsuit. And this died pretty early in the process, so it was a
What
late
is that?
ad.
I forget what that, how does that happen? Is that?
As I remember, the Attorney General would have to file a lawsuit in district court to determine the constitutionality of Tabor based on, are we a republic government or a direct democracy?
Oh, geez.
And so, do the voters have the authority to restrict a board from talking about generating revenue through taxes? Because that vote was a direct democracy vote. Every person in registered voter
And
could
I
vote.
think the decision is now to see how it rides over the next year and maybe bring it back with some modifications or maybe some more specifics, or who knows. As far as Tabor in general, maybe not this matter with Tabor, but Tabor in general.
Right. I think we're going to really feel the pinch about revenue problems now more than ever. So I think there's probably a little more
I
motivation.
think they wanted to get the conversation started again.
Well, there was some energy also behind another referred measure.
Right.
But it's kind of hard to do both at the same time, to say we think we should be a representative democracy and then send a vote out for a direct democracy kind of vote. Like, we kind of have to pick.
So would this be sort of a debrucing kind of, it would allow or jurisdictions to debruce, and
I
would
think
that
it
be the
would,
result of this?
I think it would undo Bruce.
It would undo all of Tabor, would have
Yes.
taken Tabor totally out of the Constitution. This question would have.
Oh, wow.
It was a big deal, and I think they're gonna now try and pare it down. So they wanted to ruffle the feathers and then smooth them down a little bit.
You start your negotiation high and come down.
We'll see what happens.
I think even if this had passed, who knows how long that lawsuit would take to navigate the legal system? I mean, would it be 10 years that we'd be waiting for an answer? And in the meantime, we might be looking at things like real estate transfer fees before then. And we might be looking at some other ways to diversify revenue. So we'll see where that goes. I think there's enough energy and enough passion in local government that's really feeling the pinch of Tabor. I wouldn't be surprised to see this again. So overall, how did we do? In Pitkin County, the positions that we took, I called that 6-3. We won 6 and didn't get our way on 3. I think that's pretty good. And CCI, they batted 73%. And CCAT was at 80.
Wow.
And CC4CA at 67.
I'm surprised CCI was at 73. That's really good for CCI.
Yeah, and I made the huge asterisk there. I'll make two asterisks.
Adjust as they go.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we go through these steering committees, we go from one to the other. So I didn't include amend or monitor because they could likely take some of their amend and monitor positions as wins, the same as we did on 1096, right? So these were just formal positions of support or oppose off of their bill trackers, which you all have. And I'm sure that those numbers will fluctuate a little bit as CCI, CCAT, and CC4CA will send out their own legislative debriefs. And so I'll have that for you next time in a couple weeks just to kind of close that out.
Okay.
And I thought this was an interesting kind of comparison to see how we aligned in our votes with our local legislators. So we've got Velasco and Caitlin. I see I misspelled his name. Don't tell him. I was actually pretty surprised. The only real outlier that we saw was on 1321, which is the $4 million to fight adverse actions from the federal government. So that's that bill. And
I mean, not surprised that Mark was not pro that.
Mark was against that.
The bold and.
I couldn't resist. Let's see. So 1096, I didn't really worry about. That was the automated solar permitting because yes or no, it didn't really seem to make much of a difference by the time we got the strike below. And the NAs on 1302, 1303, 1023, and 280, that's because those bills never made it to the Senate floor. So he didn't have to vote on those. They died before they got to him. Who knows what he would have done, but we didn't have to find out. So I thought this was interesting to see how our positions aligned with our local legislators. And in your free time, these are all links. And so down on the bottom left, Senator Caitlin's bills, you can click on that link and it'll show all the bills that he was the prime sponsor on, and the same with Rep. Velasco. And then you can click the other link and see how they voted on all the bills that we tracked through the session. So the long list of all the profile bills that I tracked, you can see how each of them voted on all those, just if you're curious. I know. I'll hold my breath for that one. So in terms of other advocacy, CC4CA had the sign-on letter that was essentially defending our action in the climate space. It was just symbolic more than anything, I think. The Defending AmeriCorps letter, which we spoke about 2 or 3 times ago, I don't remember. I think Francie said she was going to sign on to that one. Economy and Tourism Advocacy letter we sent to Rep. Hurd. I think that was something John Peacock and Aspen One and a few folks put together talking about tourism and economic impacts of some of the federal action.
And while we were on Hurd, he was the only no vote against the reconciliation bill. Yeah, of the Republicans.
Of the Republicans, you're right.
Yeah, that was amazing.
I thought that was great. Public lands are still for sale, but
You said to thank, did you send a thank?
I sent him a thank you letter for his signing the letter that Nagoose and Bennett and everybody.
Right, and I called his office and left a message thanking him for his public land support.
that was really inspiring. I thought.
Both he and Caitlin are
Yeah, that's good.
good guys.
I think a lot of their views come from how much outreach they hear from local governments, and just because they're kind of one of us over here in this area, so they kind of understand the value of a lot of these things. Let's see, Colorado Consumer Health Initiative was a Medicaid advocacy at Rep. Hurd's office. Jeffrey, I think you went to that. Great photo, by the way.
Thank you.
The SHRED Act and the CORE Act, of course, we talked about 2 or 3 meetings ago, and we sent a support outreach to Senator Bennett's office basically saying, we're in full support of both of these. Please let us know how we can advocate and help. And have not heard anything back from them, but they know we're on their side, and hopefully they'll reach out if we can help. Protecting tax-exempt bonds for local government. That was another advocacy letter we sent to Bennett, Hickenlooper, and Hurd. I heard back from 2 of the 3. Thank you for your support and letter. I don't remember which 2 now, I'm sorry. And we also sent that same letter almost as a template to Northwest COG and to the lobbyists, just in the event that anybody else would want to sign on or steal the language or borrow some of our stats or however it may be, I think that's one that's really worth banging the drum on as we talked about infrastructure projects like airport and landfill and things like that. I think that's pretty noteworthy. And finally, the executive order unleashing American energy. We submitted a letter in opposition of basically taking apart NEPA. And I don't know that anyone read it or that it did any good, but we did it anyway. So I think it was April 11th when the interim rules went into effect, and it sounds like it proceeded without too many hiccups. The NEPA rules as the overarching umbrella were kind of deregulated, and each individual agency now has their own approval processes designed to streamline approvals.
I would add to your list, though, I think there's two others, and maybe you know, that just from a Pitkin County standpoint, the two others would be, I don't know how you wrap in the conversation with Kevin Warner around the impact and losses at the U.S. Forest Service relative to staffing and needs over the summer. And the other one I'd add at the state level is the DFPC letter, Division of Fire Prevention and Control letter that went over to Director Mike Morgan and to Chief Chris Burnett regarding the Firehawk helicopter and having again regional support for wildfire. So I think
we'll add those. Thank you. That'll be interesting to see how that conversation goes based on our meeting last week.
Yeah.
How the funding picture looks going forward.
I think we need to continue to have that conversation and push it with, so I was just adding to the advocacy that's on the slide, Patty, and say that there's other, we have our arguments in other fields that beyond what's on the slide here.
Mm-hmm.
So, I heard the helicopter come up. If you want to talk to me, I met with Perry Will about that yesterday.
Oh, you did?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I'll fill you in.
Thank you.
I would also say I know one of the items that we flagged is probably bringing in some of the work Jessica is doing too. So as the state session has ended and you all start to focus on your federal advocacy, probably having Levi and Jessica getting to work together on coming up with maybe some priorities of where you all want to have your talking points with our representatives.
Levi and who?
Jessica Moynihan.
Moynihan, John pronounced it Moynihan. I'm going to hopefully be having some kind of meeting or talk with her before the NACO convention in July.
Sweet. So still on the list, I think there are still some advocacy efforts that we can make for the CEQ interim rule and the NEPA dismantling. Who knows what that's going to look like as people start to apply for projects and go through their permissions. I just imagine that we'll still have a voice there. Something that just came up yesterday were potential changes to the FEMA disaster limits, effectively quadrupling the amount of uninsured losses that local governments would need to endure before they could qualify for FEMA assistance.
Oh my gosh.
So I just did some napkin math. It looks like, at least for us at a county level, the multipliers are a little different, county level and statewide. But the county level, the uninsured loss would have to be $330,000-ish now, as opposed to 82 if the rule doesn't change. And then the state of Colorado, it's 11 million to 45 million.
Oh, geez.
So that's been described as a budget problem, you might imagine.
Especially with a summer like this one's going to be.
Right, and you think about what kind of events would no longer qualify, and I think, I don't know where Lake Christine falls. I don't know where some other things that have happened, at least across the state that I can think of would fall, but I understand they're trying to save, the deductible almost, or raise the deductible to save money, but I think this could be a good chance for us to advocate to not do this. So I've attached a link there, and you all can just click on that as you get time. The Air Quality Control Commission methane rulemaking, we talked about that last time. The rulemaking hearing comes in August. That's basically methane from landfills and a bunch of regulations associated with that. Brian and his team are the experts there. I'd just like to keep bringing it up so we're ready when time comes. And Brian was just here. Did I hear Patty ask him about the surface transportation reauthorization package?
He's on it.
Great. Senator Bennett's office last night asked if people could reach out and say, hey, what's working, what's not working, what changes would you like to see? And we need your comments due back by the 14th, which is tomorrow.
That was Hickenlooper's office.
Brian's got to call Bennett.
All of them.
All of it, so, okay.
But Brian's got to call into Hillary Henry about it. And the surface transportation was a big discussion at the NACO last Transportation Committee meeting, which we had a conflicting meeting. So I asked Brian if he wanted me to touch base at some point with the NACO Transportation Coordinator. And he said right now he's kind of got it, and he's going to talk with Hillary about comments Picken County would be submitting.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And another that just recently came through, Rep. Nagoose is going to reintroduce housing fairness for mountain communities, which, as you might remember, would compel HUD to study the challenges for mountain communities in using AMI as essentially qualifying for federal dollars in housing.
Isn't HUD the problem we have with housing?
Maybe you make them look at their own problem.
Yeah.
So I think this is something that we'd really like to support, of course. AMI limits really jam us up here. So
yeah,
there's an info link attached to that as well. And I think at some point, CAST and Rep. Nagoose will just be looking for one-liner quotes of, it would be great if we could reevaluate the models used to calculate AMI, or however that might look. I think they're basically just looking for support from mountain communities. So there hasn't been any formal ask to write a letter or to sign on to anything, but I think
they should be prepared probably to do that.
I think it's
This
coming.
is because of higher income and higher home values in mountain communities?
I think the way AMI is calculated based on wages here, almost nobody qualifies for housing
We make
that's
too much money.
100% AMI limited or things like that. It's just really limiting.
And it doesn't take into consideration cost of living or housing prices and that, so it kind of butts up against itself.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember what 100% AMI in Pitkin is. It's around $100,000.
Plus.
I think.
96.
I had 92 I had 92 on my
100%
computer
AMI
last year. I don't remember this year.
So for Levi, other,
I think you're probably, yeah. 87, yeah. 87.
other items that should be on more fun to come slide?
I have a fund that is still in progress. I have calls into Congressman Hurd's office to verify support or not. We need Hickenlooper. We haven't heard from about Corin Shred.
Is it Hickenlooper that didn't write back?
And Janice, we didn't hear back from her, and I did not get a chance to call her.
Okay.
But Hurd did sign on in support of both, I believe.
I don't know if he's...
I'll run it by, I've got to call into Betsy too about those two, and there was, and then inviting Congressman Hurd to spend some time at Snowmass Falls property. I've been waiting to hear back from his office for a while now. I need to send Betsy a stronger worded email, I think. I know they're busy in the transition, but we need to hear back.
And then looking at both Kara and Levi, anything for Medicaid in May, given the pressures and appropriations, anything else we should have on our more fun to come slide? As in meeting in junction once is probably not sufficient relative to our overall community needs.
I haven't heard. Have you heard anything from Lindsay or anybody that's trying to organize any more formal
for the Medicaid cuts?
Support?
I would need to get back to Lindsay. I know there's a lot happening. I think we could add it to this list as they're waiting to really see what comes out of the true budget pieces of it.
It's a flag. It's whatever we're in, whatever day in May. We've got the next couple of weeks. Is there any other requests of the board between now and the end of May?
Yeah, and I don't think perhaps it is understood across the country. Haven't seen anything, but saying that, yeah, this sounds great, we're going to cut Medicaid to help bridge the gap, which is not even coming close to the tax breaks that are still included, tax breaks. But nobody understands the unintended consequences of having no Medicaid insurance coverage. People still get sick and have accidents and need health care. And that's going to come back to local hospitals, big, small, rural, or urban. So
I imagine as we go through the next couple weeks of the budget process and appropriations, asks will start to come out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
As of right now, these and what we've already talked about are all I have on my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for being on that, Jeffrey.
And so you said you were expecting the vulnerable highway user thing to come back around at some point in different form slightly.
Yep.
Next year.
I'll keep watching for that. Too.
So question for both of you, would it be easier, let's say we're sitting down tomorrow with Senator Roberts, would it be easier if it came back as two bills, one that's about truncated domes, ramps, and flares, and one that's about undulates? So in other words, I think part of the complexity of the vulnerable user road protection bill was it tried to solve for both wildlife and sort of, street corners at the same time, and then it divided the money 80% for the street corners and 20% for mule deer. So I got, the question doesn't have to be answered today, but should it have been two bills, front range sort of ramps, flares, domes, and another one for wildlife? It tried to do a lot in one bill.
Right. I'm thinking that it wouldn't go anywhere if it was just by itself.
They brought in the wildlife to maybe get more people on board for the domes.
Or vice versa.
Yeah,
You're
or
exactly
vice
right.
versa.
So remember, there was a
Depends on which
vulnerable
side of
road
the
user
pie
under
they
a
buy.
different title
Yeah.
earlier in this session that did not include the wildlife component.
Okay.
That was just the domes and ramps, and it died.
Didn't go anywhere.
It died an
Okay.
immediate death. Under the
So-
premise of bundling it would get more support, but obviously that didn't work either. So maybe.
Maybe it'll come back around. I'm trying to remember our earlier discussions long ago about there was a proposal to add additional taxes for EVs, road taxes.
So I remember that being a concept bill at CCI when we did our steering committee legislative introductions, maybe October, November.
Yeah, last fall.
And I don't remember ever seeing
Never went
legislation
anywhere.
that turned into anything.
There's a national movement to do that as well, which makes total sense. It's just that it's about twice what it ought to be compared to gas vehicles.
So I think we hit Levi's top 4. I don't know if we've hit the calendar of events that you put in front of us.
Hit my top 4. Right. True story. So this is just sort of a FYI. These are just kind of the upcoming retreats throughout the summer and fall. I'm planning to be at all these. I think, Jeffrey, you talked about CCI and CC4CA. I don't know if Kelly might be coming to CCAT. Mountain Towns 2030 and CAST. Those look like two separate items, but they're bundled together, so they'll kind of be one big meeting.
And I think
That
John
makes
has
sense.
expressed interest in CCI as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
We need to start, I think, this new section of our agendas, when we have just items, and maybe we should just start putting these meetings on, just
Okay.
so we know, so if 3 of us decide to go.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And you and I are both going to Breckenridge?
Yes, ma'am.
I haven't decided, because I went the last time, but October's a ways away.
It's a long way from now.
Yeah.
And the only other bullet point I would throw out from this slide is to think about legislative ideas that we might want to initiate.
Oh, it is
So,
on our CCI list.
right. Because I know this date comes sooner every year and it sneaks up on us. So I think last year we had tax credit per gallon for sustainable aviation fuel, and then the real estate transfer fee were our two. And we can definitely run that one back out.
I think we should, that one just is in there.
And as we transition to a different governor, I think we'll get a lot more traction there. I think he just promised to veto that
Before we even had a discussion.
before we even.
Build housing, but I'm not telling you how, I'm not giving you any way to fund it.
And I don't know where the water's coming from.
Oh, yeah, forget about water.
Anything else for Levi? Can you add our due date on this calendar? Due date for
Yes.
for ideas for legislators.
I don't even have it yet, but
It's a while.
but I will for like
So it's
CCI.
August, isn't it?
It's August or September. It's already in the calendar.
Yeah,
Is it
but
really?
I mean, it's not like
I
June.
have it on my calendar, yeah. It's like.
It's
but
not like June.
We already have October on the calendar here, so.
We already have hotel rooms and cars and everything lined up
Yeah.
for that. We're on it.
So the proposed issues deadline I have of July 24th, so it's actually closer
Oh,
than
yeah.
you think.
For CCI?
I think to Levi's point, it moves up
Yeah.
earlier and earlier
I was
every
gonna
year,
say,
and it
yeah,
always
it's a lot
sneaks up
earlier
on
than it
us.
used to be.
I'm showing July 24th proposed issues deadline, so sorry if I'm talking about that in May.
No, it used to be a lot later. In the old days, when you were in junior high school, it used to be much later.
And I don't know if that's when we just need to have like the one-liner.
Yeah.
I don't know that we need to have the full proposal and verbiage built out yet. I remember that being a little later than that, but
Yeah, it's a one-liner, I think.
Yeah, I thought it was August.
fuzzy with all these things.
Would everyone appreciate a couple, anything, final sine die words?
No, I don't think so. Just a thank you slide. Any questions or anything
Thank
that's
you.
on,
Thanks,
on
Levi.
your
Thank you.
radar? Just let me know. I'll share this with you all as soon as I get back upstairs, so you can click on all the links and
Great.
read the forms. And
Good
And
work on that, very succinct.
And I want to
clear.
point out, Levi's been attending a lot of the wildfire stuff, has been dragging along Eagle County as well, so we have a partnership at the legislative level between Eagle and Pitkin, so thank you for coordinating with Laura Hartman
of course,
in Eagle, so
we
appreciate
are
that.
we're talking about kind of a statewide legislative staff sort of meeting over the summer, so we can get together with Larimer and Boulder and all the other counties to see how they all interact with their boards and try to make this process as smooth as it can be.
Thank you for
The
everything. this
legislative
session.
process?
No,
Oh.
the staff and
Staff
board,
level.
this process. I can't help that.
Would anyone mind a 7-minute break before we move on to the agendas of the future?
I would do that.
Grassroots, we're taking a 7-minute break. We will see you back at 2:30.
Half three.
Is that cool?
we're gonna go for the whole conference this time, but, anyway, I think it'd be great if you presented that.
So, do you want me to reach out to Jonathan, to Margaret?
Well, that's cast. You should reach
But
out to Margaret, probably.
Margaret coordinates
And
right now
then
with
2030,
or
no,
2030.
Margaret does cast. Let me see who does 2030. Hang on.
Better seat?
Let's see. Oh my God, some of the presentations at 2030 are so good. No, there's a picture of Pete McBride. Let's see here. Oh yeah, Bill McKibben is coming this year.
Oh, wow.
They already have the keynotes. Ramon Mendes Galen. He's Secretary Energy of Uruguay.
Hey.
Interesting.
Deanna Jeffrey, nice to meet you. Sorry, I know your name's not grassroots, so. It's good to see you. Are you normally doing Aspen? What are you normally doing?
I was doing Glenwood.
Okay.
I think I might start doing the work sessions on Tuesday.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So Deanna and Andorra.
Yeah.
All right, I got it. Likewise, thank you. I can't believe it. It seems like it was 20 years ago we talked about tie downs at the airport. It was only this morning.
Let's see, I'm trying to figure this out.
So, Kara, I don't have to worry about responding to Senator Hickenlooper's office.
I think there's a few moving parts.
Okay. No one's replied, so I'm like, all right.
Brian's
Yeah.
got it, sounds like. Sustainable Strategies is running a meeting tomorrow to pull talking points.
Okay. Oh, cool. I just haven't heard back from anyone.
I forwarded
And-
it to get
okay.
all the groups.
Yeah, no, that's what I was
together,
like.
'cause I've been
I was like,
few
oh.
different emails, so.
And I try to do the point to point. I try not to go, here are the 5 people, and then you don't know who it's to.
Hi, Chris, this is Francis Cover from.
Yeah.
And when do you think we're gonna get to open discussion?
So I think we are, future agendas, transportation, mafia, and then open discussion should be at 4 o'clock. We're on time.
Is that okay?
4 o'clock is the discussion that would be open.
I think
One
we
of
should
these
just go
days, we're
right
gonna
to
teach
Pig
you how
Latin.
to talk in
Pig Latin.
language the
it's like-
rest of the world understands.
Who was it? Was it Yoda that would always say, you know,
It's somebody in
beautiful
enough,
day it is, or something?
I know, but you lose us a lot.
That's right, I just lost the board at 3:30 when we're about to come back. They both
Well,
just
that's
went to
nothing
get
unusual. That is the norm for this board. Who's yelling back here?
That's Francie on the phone call.
I'm sorry, but when she said, yeah, about the, how are you gonna position on the EOTC funding? Those two have already made up their minds from a previous meeting, and I think that's not right.
Third time's charming.
They should have stepped out of that one and voted as EOTC, or vice versa. Plus, only one of them can vote at BRAFTA, right? We are at 3:30, so we're quorum.
We do have a quorum.
So Deanna, we're back when you want to count us down. Good afternoon. It is May 13th. This is the work session of the Board of County Commissioners of Pitkin County, Colorado. We are 2 minutes late to our 3:30 session, which is the review of future agenda, calendars, work session, regular meetings.
All right. I have 2 items. One is very soon and one is very far out, so I'm just gonna foreshadow that for you all. So the first is Food and Wine Luncheon is June 19th, 11 to 1:30. We've heard from Commissioner Clapper, Postman, and Woodruff. So Francie, if you are interested in going, tickets are going fast, and we'll reach out to Kelly.
Trying to follow up on this on 25th.
Oh,
Did you
sorry.
say?
Food and Wine Luncheon.
No,
Are you
no,
interested?
no.
Okay.
I went last year and I was just a fish out of water.
Okay. And we will follow up with Kelly. This
And that was June 19th, right?
June 19th, and we'll make
It's
sure that's
publicly
posted.
noticed.
Yeah, we'll make sure it's publicly noticed. And then fast forward to December, if you can all, I know.
I'm busy.
So holiday party, I know.
What's the menu? Menu?
Exactly.
Costume?
So we have traditionally flip-flopped between Up Valley and Down Valley as we've gotten bigger, and it's been harder to find. We got a lot of good feedback about it being at Taka last year.
I loved Taka. I thought it was great.
So we would like to do it at Taka again, but Taka is actually already booking up
Oh, wow.
for holiday parties. So we wanted to check in about Friday, December 12th at Taka. And if the board would be in support of that date, and then we would be moving forward in contracting.
Oh, why
It's a
not?
great idea to have it there, and it would be easier just to do what we did last year.
Okay.
And it's the 12th?
We would be due Friday, the 12th.
It's not a payday, though. How?
It is Our Lady of Guadalupe.
So looks like the board is in support of
Sounds good.
keeping that. Okay.
Wonderful.
And the theme, we need to come up with a theme ASAP. I need to work on my costume.
Well, we need to find the party planning guru first.
Yes.
Perfect.
One other update, Thursday, May 15th, 8 to 3 was supposed to be the Roaring Fork Watershed Summit that
Canceled.
that canceled.
Oh, okay.
I was going to try to say like dried out
You
or
were
something.
planning to go to that, weren't you?
It
I
got
was.
canceled.
I was going to go.
That
and
is
it's
canceled.
I'm grateful
Well, that's
right
good,
now.
because then you guys can make it to EOTC
On time, exactly.
That is all I have for future agendas.
And EOTC's in Snowmass, isn't
It
it?
is in Snowmass.
Any other future agenda items? Patty Clapper.
So the board knows I have jury duty call on Monday, June the 2nd. If there is a jury called and if I am selected, you never know if you get called or not. But Jeffrey will be out on the 2nd through the 4th for CCI. So if I'm out and Jeffrey's out, we need to make sure we have a quorum for Tuesday's work session.
Okay.
And I don't think we have a meeting on the 4th, so just that
It's the
day. So
6th.
just so everybody else keeps that in mind. I mean, I don't know if I'll, you never know, but you've got to plan ahead. That being said, this is just a cleanup on the agendas. On 5/20 for our work session and on 5/27, we have board membership updates, and I don't think we do them every work session. So we need to pick one.
Okay.
And on May 28th, we have a regular meeting. I'm letting you know ahead of time that I will not be here on time. It is my grandson's graduation from kindergarten. And my daughter cannot attend, so he has invited his Grammy.
Okay.
I'm sorry, guys, I'm putting my grandson ahead of you.
Family first.
Thank you.
Kara, I think I've alerted a couple of people, but I'm not going to be here on the 20th, Tuesday, next Tuesday.
Okay.
And I'm also going to be gone the 22nd, which was our special meeting, but I'm going to try to zoom in for that.
The 22nd? You're not going to be here for the airport meeting?
I'm going to be zooming in for that. That should work.
Oh.
And you've let John know about that?
I
right?
let Charlotte know, and I think I let, who else?
I thought I told Francie.
We will
We
make note of
scheduled
those.
that on the 22nd, so we'd all be there, but
I
we'll
know.
all come with you.
Yeah,
on your
exactly.
trip to Europe.
Yeah, we
Exactly.
switched it to that date because Jeffrey and I had the water fluency.
I know.
the day before.
Exactly. I'm sorry about that.
I think I'm going to Idaho from the 11th to like the 17th. So I'm going to try and catch a flight home on the 17th. So I fly into Aspen and can come to our meeting. So far, there's not a, what do you call it, exec session on that day.
Sorry, Francie, can you say those dates again?
Yeah.
Good luck getting here by noon on the, or
Yeah.
1 o'clock.
On the
'Cause you have to
17th.
take
Well, it's
two
Tuesday.
flights.
It's a
It's
Tuesday.
out of Spokane, but it's not, it's 4 hours, so if I can
Oh.
get, I'm
We
thinking
can
of
place
leaving
bets on that one.
on the 11th, but I'm gonna have to look at the schedule for that meeting, otherwise I'll do it on the 12th. I'll miss RAFTA, Greg, on the 12th. of June.
Okay, all right,
And
I'll be here.
return in time, I hope, for the meeting on the 17th. Maybe, I'll see what flights I can book, but we'll see.
Oh, I have one little.
And back to Patty.
Yeah, in talking with Brian Pettit today, for some reason, I have been eliminated. Maybe you guys eliminated me without my knowledge from the board discussions, when we discuss our other boards. I am still the board representative for the TPR.
Okay.
Brian and Linda go to the meetings, but they talk to me about the meetings, and then Brian gives me information if I need to bring it forward to the board. So unless you guys demoted me, well.
We put it on multiple weeks, and
Yeah, I
so
know,
who
and
knows?
then you skip me on one, I'm fine, you guys are just seeing if I'm reading them, well, I read these. Thank you.
And just real quick, Greg, back to you. So you're out on May 20th. You'll be virtual on the 22nd. Are
yeah.
you out on the 27th and 28th, or you'll be back?
No, I'll be back.
Okay.
He's hoping to be able to be virtual on the 22nd.
Yes, hoping to. Things could change.
What's the time change where you are? Oh, you won't be up in the middle of the night, or you might be drinking wine with dinner.
It's a morning special meeting though, right? The airport
Yeah,
meeting's in the
9
morning, so that's doable.
Any other calendar items, future agendas?
Yes, no, future agendas, no.
Do you mind if we move 7 minutes early to the Transportation Coalition update?
We need them here, don't we?
No, they're not.
Oh, that nobody coming? Okay.
Just-
You are
This
them.
is just Kara?
No, so just a clarification.
Oh, that's
Last-
that's Francie's report.
Yes, so because we were off, based on board direction last time of having the representatives from the BoCC representatives on the coalition give a report out post-coalition meetings. We did not have one last time, so this is just a report out, and then we will have, following the coalition meetings, we will have 10 to 15 minutes, depending on what you all need, for Francie or Greg to give the coalition report back to the board.
Okay, you ready? Wasn't a whole lot. So we went around the room and introduced ourselves and said what we were hoping would come out of this. And I'm just looking for it here. Hang on a second. That's Jacob's. Had it pulled up. Mostly it was, people were focused on coming up with something that's actionable. And they also wanted to build on work that has been done in the past. So they didn't want to start from scratch as though there was no Aspen Institute study or, anything like that. And then we went through a very comprehensive discussion about the actual charter and just changing some words. And those were mostly along the lines of, instead of just saying community, making it communities, so that whatever happens helps us maintain the culture of our communities.
All the way down the valley.
Yeah,
Right.
but there was a lot of discussion about, are we talking about something for the whole valley, or are we talking about the upper valley? And because in their proposal, it's Bill Kane, John Bennett, George Newman, and Michael Miracle, who are sort of the four organizers of this. And in the original description that they wrote up, they did talk about the Upper Valley. So there was quite a bit of discussion about how what happens in the Upper Valley impacts the whole valley, and whether we're trying to address congestion and emissions and basically all the things that go with traffic in the entire valley. And we went around about that. And so in the charter, eventually we changed the language to specifically talk about not just tourists and what was the other one? Another word, but to include workforce people, you know, commuters, work commuters, and how to meet their needs. And then there were like, then Jacobs presented their most recent study that was paid for by the city, and a lot of it was looking at what are the traffic patterns right now, and shockingly enough, 15% of the commuters take the power plant road every day. I was really surprised by that, which affects obviously the whole West End. And another 15% of that's incoming, and then going out 15% take McLean's. So like 20% take power plant to go home, but some of them turn left and then get back on the highway, but 15% go over McLean's Flats. And how, you know, they talked about how that road is not built for traffic. And they talked about the effects of the different approaches to the bridge, and they gave us a brief picture of the preferred alternative. And mostly, though, it was a presentation of the study of traffic as it exists now. It was quite interesting. And I believe I have the slides from
Yeah,
it.
I've got them here. I can send them to
Yeah,
Kara,
why
I guess.
don't you send them to Charlotte, and she can send them on to
Charlotte.
everybody.
Can I? Okay, go on. I'll save my question.
So then there was feedback that, okay, so we've now just spent all this time talking about our charter and this and that. Let's get on to other stuff next time. So there was a little bit of impatience at the end. It was a 4-hour meeting, I think, but it felt like 2 hours. It was pretty intense and pretty interesting. Everybody at the table spoke. By the end, everybody had spoken. Because I kept looking around and checking, and you know, we have somebody on that board who likes to speak quite a bit. So I wanted to check and make sure that other people were getting their word in. And pretty much everybody spoke. There were a lot of people who had things to say. And we'll see. Hopefully at the next one, it'll be more about moving forward and that kind of thing. But the Jacobs report is definitely worth looking at. It's pretty fascinating. The presenters were not the presenters who presented to us here on the bridges. This was more of a comprehensive study rather than just the different approaches to the entrance to Aspen. We talked quite a bit about why aren't the Castle Creek Bridge crossings greater than they were in 1998 or whatever, you know? And part of it is just because the bridge can only carry so many cars. So you can only have so many cars go across the bridge. But most of the reason for not having an increase in the amount of traffic coming right into Aspen is attributed to RAFTA and the riders on RAFTA. And that if it weren't for RAFTA, it would be worse, basically. That's about all. I'm looking through the little summary right now. I can't see anything else that's really...
So somebody did a summary of the meeting, or you did?
Say again?
Did
Yeah, I'm
somebody
looking
else-
at the...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're sending out the
Yeah,
slideshow?
I would like to have opportunity to see all the information. Can I?
Yes,
ask you
of course.
a question? You know, is it Edward, the guy who, where's he from, Holland, or?
Yeah.
Does he, do you know if he's, Michael Miracle contacted me about seeing Edward's presentation. I contacted him about 3 times. It was never set up. And then Edward said he wasn't doing them anymore. So I never got to see it.
The scoop is that he won't do them anymore unless he gets paid for his ideas.
I wasn't going to say that.
But he is getting paid now. SKICO is supporting him with some money. It's not tremendously huge amount. And so he's kind of, we're supposed to actually get together here the next week or so. He just, he's a little concerned that his ideas, once people have seen some of his ideas, they kind of become a part of that person's way of thinking about the traffic issues, and even unintentionally, it becomes part of their vision for the future. I mean, because he is such a visionary that when you see his ideas, they just become a part of your consciousness. It's a funny thing. And so his ideas could just be implemented and possibly diluted, possibly not, but without any further interaction with him, I think is part of his concern. So
He wants like ownership of those ideas?
he doesn't want to own them, but, you know, he wants to be involved. And
Well,
so,
I would like to see it, since I haven't had the opportunity, and you would think he would want people to put that into their brains for thinking, so they would come to some kind of action. But
yes. Well, he definitely wants
So
that.
who should I contact? If he's not gonna
Well, I
present
asked
to
him
this
about
group?
that. I asked, he presented to you guys, right?
Should I call Michael again, touch base?
Yeah.
I called him, he never called me back.
Well,
I'll leave him another message.
I'm pretty sure he's not going to do another presentation until possibly to the coalition, possibly to the EOTC, but it's worth pursuing.
Yeah, okay, I'll follow up with
Because
that.
I want to see his more recent one also. I haven't seen his more recent
So
one.
I'll follow up on that. The other one was, as far as the use of Power Plant Road, people coming and going, you know, I believe, and if somebody could follow up with this, that the city has a regulation that you can't drive block to block to block to block in the West End. Therefore, it's a city enforcement issue. Maybe if the city would start enforcing people using that as a bypass from Main Street S-curves, that would make a difference.
There are ways to get through the West End without encountering that you could only go one block sort of.
Well, maybe
that
the city
signage.
needs to revisit
Like,
that.
you can take like, I think it's Fifth maybe, and then turn left on Summit or
Smuggler?
Francis.
Or
You know,
one of those.
there's ways to do it.
Well, so maybe the city needs to expand that
Smuggler. That's
to
what Smuggler.
be able to better manage that, because I've had people, I know that there's people who are concerned about the constant flow of cars going by their house. I don't
it's
blame
terrible.
them at all.
terrible.
But maybe that should be something that the city could either start enforcing on their own, and I don't know if you, I don't know.
We didn't talk about that, but I could bring that
Yeah,
up.
and,
But it's not just the flow of traffic, it's the stopped traffic spewing out. And
It's crazy, that whole West End in the evenings, but all of town is crazy, coming and going, but, guess you have to live in town to know that, because it's everywhere. But, and then the Pickens County new traffic numbers, I think, are gonna be very, very important, because it monitors the type of vehicles. It's
Yeah.
different, and I don't know if Jacob's had, that information is just out, it's just forthcoming right now. And I think that's gonna be really critical
Me
as
too.
part of, because I think it's gonna show us some really good information.
There were questions about whether or not their study could identify the type of vehicle, and I didn't bring up.
These are the new counters can, and the placement of new counters is really critical.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna get a lot of information. I don't know if we're gonna get it between now and when this coalition thing is done, but that stuff really needs to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
yeah, so if Charlotte will send me on that,
I just sent it to her.
yeah, I would like to stay involved, especially since if there's any decision points for Francie to make, since Greg's the alternate, or whichever one of you is involved in that, I think it's good for the rest of the board to be up to speed.
The only decisions we made the other day were just a thumbs up on language
The
changes for the
wordsmithing
charter.
type stuff.
Those Free
Yeah.
word stuff.
Yeah. I thought the list, I finally got a list of who's on it, was not quite as diverse as I had hoped. But there's only one person who is not affiliated with some, either level of government, past, current, or board membership. Had 2 ACRA board members on there. So I thought it was interesting, and the one lady from the French pastry,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
I was
No,
delighted to see her
She
there.
was so delighted to be on there.
Yeah.
First of all, she brought this lunch that was insane. I didn't realize it was coming, so I had stopped at Subway, so I didn't have any. But she was thrilled to be a part.
No
It was-
wonder they
It was
appointed
really
her.
cool.
I know.
Who wouldn't appoint a French pastry person?
And then
For that for the future.
It is a whole lot of government people, for sure. But there's ACES, Chris Lane is on it. And then there's the person from the Gant. So there's-
Donnie Lee, who's chairman of ACRA.
And then Michael Miracle, of course.
And there is nobody from the Aspen. I thought that Crystal Logan was going to be part of it, but she's not listed on that
Diane
list.
Moore is the Aspen Planning
Dee
Department.
Dee, I know,
School District.
yeah. And I think Dave Ressler was going to be in, isn't ABH?
But John Sarpa is on there, correct? As board member?
Yeah,
As
the hospital.
AVH, as
Yeah.
But
hospital board.
I thought there was, is he the only ABH rep? He's also
Yes, he
representing
is.
SARPA Development.
He is.
I thought it was
Then
interesting.
this lady, Kissane Viola Design,
Katie, yeah. She's a Woody Creeker.
and Steve Wicks, but Steve is mostly a moderator.
He's, yeah, really good. I like Steve.
I don't actually know how this came about.
Yeah, I think the membership is of interest. I'd like to have seen it a little more diverse, but that being said. Thank you.
And they will be at EOTC. There will be, I know, Patty, you won't be there, but they will be providing they're on the EOTC agenda.
Coalition?
Mm-hmm. A brief
I think
update.
it's 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's a brief update.
Anything further on the?
Sorry, I won't be there.
Anything further on the coalition?
No, thanks, and I do appreciate it if we can I just want to make sure we get, our work sessions get so packed. It's nice if we reserve that space after you guys have your coalition meetings for that next Tuesday while it's still fresh.
And
That way
we're
we can all stay involved.
7 minutes early for open discussion.
The only open discussion item I have, maybe Greg has this, is you all should have a copy of the Albert Schweitzer proclamation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's.
Just for clarification, this would be in the actual proclamation format, but the proposal is that this would come forward on June 25th, if the board wanted to
I
move forward.
didn't know we were designating a day. I thought we were just doing a proclamation. We do not, in my history, designate a day. We usually support days that are previously designated by a different organization, but
Well, maybe the city will do it first, and then it'll be previously designated.
Well, maybe this is the alternative to Mother Teresa Day.
we'll take a national holiday. No, I just think a proclamation in
Well, it's not a
itself
day off or
is
anything.
pleasant. No, but we do not, in the past history, designate a day to someone. I think that a proclamation, and this proclamation is well-written, is what we need to do. I would rather we not designate a day.
Okay,
We should ask Canada.
what they think.
It's Canada Day.
That day is Canada Day. How do you know that?
He's a wealth of
Do you have
trivia.
a photographic memory?
He's a wealth of trivia.
He saw it once when he was in the 9th grade and remembered it ever since.
So that, when
Okay,
I,
we have
last,
Patty's opinion. I'd love to
well,
hear
yeah, but
what
last I
other people
talked to
think.
John Peacock, it was going to just be a proclamation, so somehow that wording got slipped in there.
Is it just this one day?
Well,
Or is it every year day?
The group that wants to do it, of which I'm a part, would love to see it happen every year, but we're not gonna commit to creating events every year. It's just gonna be a one thing this year, with the hope that it grows from there. So that's the idea, that it would be something that happened annually. Of course, the city will get a proclamation and the mayor will probably come and read it, is the idea. And there'll be a series of events, concert, panel discussions, book talk, and a keynote speaker.
Gosh, really?
Yeah.
What is a day of service?
What?
Can you define that? It says a day of service.
Well,
What does that mean?
if you know much about Albert Schweitzer, his whole thing was on service to others.
Well, which is on our plaque out here.
Right. Well,
But
something,
does
a
that
quote
mean?
from him is on the plaque
but-
out there.
But
So anyway, he had a significant impact on the formation of modern Aspen in 1949. And the whole thought of this would be to encourage and inspire people to continue with the practice of empathy and service to others, philanthropy, things that this community actually does quite well. But the thought was, let's keep reminding people and inspiring people to keep that up. So that's the entire point of it. And using Schweitzer as the inspiration.
Well, days of service, like CRMS has a day of service, CCS, where I taught for all those years, had a day of service. I think Country Day has a day of service. So a day of service is when whatever, an organization can do it, an individual can do it, you devote your day to service work.
But we've never done a proclamation declaring a day of service in Pickett
We've
County.
never done it before. It can never be done. You realize that, right?
I'm just saying.
That was snarky.
Snarky, it was snarky, but I'm tired
I'm
of
just
it.
saying, you're a member of this organization that's just moving this forward. You're now appealing to us to move it forward for this organization and for you as a member of the organization. And I think a proclamation is perfectly fitting. I just am concerned about us declaring a day in the name of someone.
I got that. What is the organization?
It's not an it doesn't have a name yet. It's a coalition of local people who think that this is something we want to inspire. But it's not the Historical Society is putting on the event, so they're the nonprofit associated. And the community church and possibly the Aspen Chapel, so it's a group of local entities and people involved with them that are doing this. And so it's not like it's an organization that's looking for something. It's trying to recognize somebody who had a significant impact on the cultural renaissance of Aspen.
Well, I think it sounds great. Should we wait until Kelly's here?
Sure,
Bring
no,
it
that's
back?
fine. We're not in a giant rush. It's just what Charlotte said is that she wanted to know if she should work on this because it needs to be formatted and
Yeah.
probably edited somewhat. It's probably a bit long. And she said, I'm not going to go to work on it unless I know you guys are interested in doing it. So that's why it's here. Now is to say, tell her, yeah, put it in form for us, and then we'll be considering it and voting on it later.
Well, I certainly hear Patty's point, and I just don't really know yet how I feel.
Right. Well,
So
it's
if
fun.
you could bring it back to us when Kelly's here, I think.
I'll email it to her and see what she thinks.
Well, I
She
think
may
she
already
needs to be
have it.
part of the discussion with us.
Can I maybe get a clarification point? Because I'm hearing support perhaps as the proclamation, but maybe some clarification and some decision still needed of this move
it's a day or
to
not.
create a day. So if I may have Charlotte clarify that the four of you are in support of Charlotte moving forward with drafting a proclamation.
And then we can
about
work
that,
on the edit.
and then we can
Yeah.
look at it and maybe talk offline about what that might look like, Greg, for the organization of if it actually is a day, the impact that would be, or if there's a whereas that we can add in here to kind
Got
of
it.
find a
I think
compromise.
that's fine, and that's also
Yeah.
due to naivete, no one there ever put a proclamation together, including me, so.
Well,
it's not a
and
big
then
deal.
I'm concerned that there's a lot of people that contributed a lot to our community. So are we gonna do a day of whatever to, I think we need to keep in mind that there's a lot of people to celebrate in this community, and we do a lot with our Pickett County Cares Awards. Those are people that are
which are
usually
great.
alive and breathing. But also we recognize a lot of people that have made a difference in our community in many different ways. I just think that, and proclamations have been given for those. That's why my concern about creating a day for one, do we create a day for? Yeah, so I think a proclamation would
It's like
be
a
very
snowball.
appropriate.
Once it gets started, you never know, there'll be a day for everyone.
It's like naming
We all get our day.
But we don't all get a proclamation.
Any
And a
further,
day.
can we move on, or do we need further discussion?
So does it sound like you have enough info to take it to Charlotte and say, put it in some form where we could then consider it and get it over with one way or another?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Great. Progress.
That is all I have for open discussion.
I have open discussion.
Francie, please.
Okay,
want another
so
one of these.
I'm sure you guys are aware that the town of Carbondale is building a new aquatic center, and they originally when they floated a bond a few years ago for this, the price on the project was $8 million. And then COVID came, and it's now 11 million. So they've been running a fundraising campaign, which is really unusual for a municipality. And Kelly had seen the ads in the paper. I mean, the letters to the editor. In fact, I had a letter to the editor. I don't know if any of you saw it about the pool. And Kelly called me up and she said, well, why don't we think about doing this with our parks fund that we just learned about a month ago that we didn't know we had before. And I think there's like 500,000 left in it. I think we gave 200,000 to Redstone, is that right? And we had 700 in it, I think. Anyway, and she suggested, why don't you bring it up to the board, because I think we could help Carbondale put this together. And we don't really have a public pool for people down valley. And a lot of the people who use the pool are Pickens County residents. And it's been a very long haul for them. My sister has been a consultant for the fundraising, but honestly, this didn't come from me. It came from Kelly, which I thought was interesting.
Didn't Carbondale have a pool? Did they tear it out?
It's out right now.
It died. It died.
Yeah.
They strung it along for 2 years, and then it was just not viable anymore. So the funding gap, the remaining funding gap is 800,000, and they're trying to fill it. And they were at Dandelion Days. I guess they had a really successful time at Dandelion Days the other day. It was a warm day, and people were thinking pool, and they were right next to the pool and stuff. So anyway, I'm wondering if you guys would like to hear a presentation from the Carbondale Pool campaign, or consider this.
I think they need a pool. I mean, they have a hole there in the ground. It'd be a perfect place to put a pool. Is they going to put it in the same place, right?
It's in the same
At
place,
Sierra
and the
Park?
two pools have already been poured.
At Sierra Park.
And the foundation for the building has already been poured. It's a net zero building. It's already gotten an award for its design from something in Colorado. I don't know what.
So it's already underway.
They are, and they've applied to Corps, not the Eagle County Transportation, but our Corps, for a grant. And I think they're waiting to hear from it. And so I said, well, what about Clear? But I talked to Morgan Hill at Clear, and they don't do those kind of grants. They do a lot of other things, but they don't do capital grants. So anyway.
Yeah, we'd need to clarify with legal if we can use the money outside of Pickens County.
Right.
And I think a pool would probably, I don't know, just to clarify the use
I
of
think
those
when he
funds.
read us the requirements within that particular account, it was park, recreation, yeah.
But I don't know if we can use it outside of the county.
I don't either.
But I would not have a problem looking at an opportunity to contribute some money from that fund if we can legally do so. And how much, I think we need to be aware that now that we're realizing we have the fund and we can use it for various reasons, we're gonna be being tapped for other issues. So I think being fair to people within Pickens County, even though I know people use that pool who live in Pickens County. And there's the one in Basalt at Albany.
Who controls
So-
the money? I
Yeah.
mean, which department? Is it in open space?
No, it's our money?
Yeah.
No, it's a separate fund. It's an impact fund fee that was created many, many years ago.
It goes into the general fund?
No, it's in its own fund.
It's its own separate fund
forgot
that we're
about?
trying.
No, we used it in
trying to spend
Redstone.
it.
Yeah.
Right,
Yes,
yes,
we're
yes,
trying
yes.
to.
Building.
Yeah.
No, just last.
Did you hear? She said we're trying to get rid of it.
Yeah, it is one and Patty might know better, but it was a fund that we had created as part of the Wexner Exchange. That's where we got a lot of the money, but
The Wexner Exchange?
as part of the Wexner Exchange,
Oh,
some of
I didn't know that.
They had some money and it never went to where it was supposed to go, so we created a fund to put it in.
I see.
We actually used it once at Basalt Vista, which is in Pickens County, for their playground area. It was $30,000. We've used it in Redstone for the historic preservation of the house with the park behind it, 200,000. And so now we have a little over, I think, 700,000 and change left.
I think Rye classified museum visits as recreation. I think that's how he justified it.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure
there's a
that
park there.
we don't have other departments looking for we could possibly use that for a park that's closer to home, as much as I'd love to see us help
It's closer at
Carbondale.
home to quite a lot of people in Pitkin County, by the way.
Well, what I'm saying is.
It's not in
I'm
Pitkin
not saying
County.
make closer home's the wrong word. It's like, what else is out there? And is there somebody else who's been waiting in line who's
What I
wants to see this
I
happen?
think it's
what
good
I
to keep
might
a little reserve.
suggest, if the board is okay with this, is let us get with legal and confirm how it's being used, and let us check in with staff. There was something else that came up that is not on the top of my mind, just so you can see other ideas that have been
Great.
talked about,
That's a good idea.
and we can bring it back to the board, and then you can have the discussion if you want to invite Carbondale Pool to come and give a
I don't know if
presentation.
you need a
It'd be nice to
presentation.
know what
but-
else is out there.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't need a long presentation either.
I would say in Pitkin County, whether you call it a park or not, we're the lime kiln.
That
in
would, yes,
Thomasville
thank you.
has been on the board's plate. Stephanie Soldner.
That's a
would-
park. We did look at funding that. How were we gonna
You guys
fund
didn't
that?
want to, you wanted it to fall down, Francie.
Stephanie Soldner,
I still do. Mm-hmm.
who is in Pitkin County, is fundraising for the Soldner Center. They have grass there.
Art, grass, art.
We'll start
It
with.
wasn't
I know.
meant to be. I'm saying you were
There
asking
would
about.
be, others will come
There's
forward.
others that will come forward. So why don't we start with getting some clarity on what that definition, working definition is, and what we know, at least to date, the board has or has not, or has been coming up, and you all can discuss maybe some prioritization there.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Sounds
Thank you.
great. Thank you.
That's my only open discussion.
You know what I would really like for us to have a day of service is for nobody to ask us for money. I think that would be a great day, way to celebrate a day.
We could
It's our
designate-
job to spend money.
We could
I know.
We collect
I-
taxpayers' monies, and it's our job to spend
That's
it.
what many people in this country think, that it's the government's job to just spend money, but
Well, it is.
sometimes we need to
You
be
can't
prepared
keep
for.
taxpayers' money for ourselves.
Telluride has a weekend designated to the No Festival.
I asked the city of Aspen to do
Carbondale needs
a
that.
no
A
weekend
no
weekend,
festival.
and they refused.
Carbondale really needs
So-
a no festival weekend.
Yeah.
This is a work session. It's open discussion. We're discussing things openly. Would anyone like to adjourn the meeting?
Yes.
No, I want to see if we're done
I'd like to.
discussing things openly.
Do we have any more open discussion?
I don't. I'm out of here.
Okay, I'm gonna tell Jim and White I'm on my way.
Okay.
Deanna and Andorra, thank you so much for your time. And Rosa, you look stressed, but enjoy your evening.
Double dipping. She's moonlighting.